July 31st, 2024. And first thing I need to do is a roll call, please.
Chair Preston,
Here.
Vice Chair Lloyd, Commissioner Borders,
Present.
Commissioner Kilgore,
Here.
Commissioner DeChristopher,
Here.
Commissioner Cron. I know you're here, Vern. Commissioner Brooks. A quorum's present. Oh, you're there too. A quorum's present.
Okay, and can we check Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Cron's audio again?
Could you guys speak?
Testing.
What?
Yeah.
I heard an audio check request, so I was saying testing.
Okay, thank you. Vern? Okay, well, I'd like to go
Commissioner
ahead.
Cron, can you hear us? Huh.
I can hear you now.
Okay, great, thank you. And me, Commissioner Borders, would you like to lead us
Hello?
in the, hello? Commissioner Borders, would you like to lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
Members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen, join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a notice to the public. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment in advance of a meeting by, I'm sorry. Excuse me, just one moment. Okay. We will have at least 2 public comment periods prior to adjournment. However, if you would like to speak about an individual item that's on the agenda, perhaps you should wait for that time. However, we do encourage people to do their public comments. You have 3 minutes, and what we ask is we ask that everyone is respectful for the people in the room. We don't clap. There is, we ask that you be respectful to the commissioners, the other people in the room, and the staff. If not, I will ask you to stand down. When you come up, please sign in, hit the green button, and tell us your name, so then that way we have it for the record. And the clock is back here, and that's where you'll see the 3 minutes. And when we look at that, please understand that none of us commissioners can see the clock. We actually have to physically turn around. It's not that we're not listening to you. The other thing I would like to bring up is that we can't answer you. This is a statement for you to make your statement. We can't answer questions. We can't nod. We can't agree. You know, you're there to make your statement. So would anyone like to come forward for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to continue. For possible action, the approval of the minutes of June 23rd, 2024.
June 23rd or June 26th?
I'm sorry, June 26th, 2024.
Madam Chairman, I'll recommend that we approve the minutes of June 26th, 2024 as presented in the staff report.
Okay, second.
I second.
All in favor? Any opposed? None? Passed. Okay, now we're on for item number 6A. LU 2024-2040 for possible action, discussion, possible action regarding an application for a special use permit, SUP, to allow for the replacement of a metal storage container on parcels zoned retail commercial, RC, located at 3399 North Carson Street, assessor parcel number APN 002-39206. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. The subject property is zoned retail commercial and is located on the east side of North Carson Street, approximately 250 feet south of its intersection with College Parkway. The site is developed with a relatively small building constructed in the late 1940s, which is currently occupied by a gift shop. The applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit for the permanent placement of a metal storage container for the storage of stock for the gift shop. Per Carson City Development Standards, Division 1.10, a storage container may be permanently placed in a commercial zoning district subject to first obtaining a special use permit and compliance with the applicable development standards. In the staff report, you'll see that I've provided a detailed analysis of how the container meets the requirements of the development standards, and that begins on page 3 of the staff report, and I'm happy to go over any of those with you at your request. A couple of things to highlight is that the property is zoned retail commercial, which allows for the permanent placement of containers in conjunction with the primary use, subject to first obtaining the special use permit. The container will be used for the storage of products for the on-site gift shop, and the container is located to the side of the on-site structures and behind an existing privacy fence on both the front and back of the structures. And there's a couple of photos that demonstrate that. Additionally, consistent with code, staff will conduct an administrative review every 5 years to ensure that the container continues to be in compliance with special use permit and the municipal code. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff was able to make all findings and is recommending approval, subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report. We've not received any public comments related to this project. With that, I'm available for questions, and Carol Ray, the applicant, is also available.
Okay. Do you have any questions of staff? Okay, and may the applicant come forward, please? Yes, right there. Okay, and you push the little button until it turns green.
You don't have to hold it, just push it.
Oh, okay.
Hi,
Hello,
don't be nervous.
I'm Carol Ray.
Okay, and have you read the conditions that are required?
Have I what?
Have you read the conditions?
Yes,
Okay, and do you agree with them?
yes.
Okay, and is there any questions of any of the commissioners of Ms. Ray? Okay,
It's me.
just, yes, Commissioner Borders.
Hello, Ms. Ray. You're one of those that's here for forgiveness instead of approval, I guess, since it's already there.
Yes. I honestly didn't know that it,
Okay.
didn't know that it wasn't
The only
allowed.
question I have is, and it's a requirement in the conditions, is that it be painted and secured to the ground. And you're gonna be able to do that?
Painted a neutral color.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that in there.
Okay. That was the only question I had.
It's not quite as bright as it looks in the picture, but
Yeah. And it doesn't, you can't hardly see it from the road anyway. So.
no.
Back far enough. Okay, any further questions? Okay, public comment? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to go ahead and look for a motion. Oh, will you, so you accept all the conditions of these? Okay, perfect. Okay, Commissioner Christopher?
I'll do a motion.
Thank
I
you.
move to approve LU-2024-0240 based on findings and subject to conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Okay, looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you. By Commissioner Kilgore, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, everybody's aye. Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Cron?
Yes, aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have LU 20240241 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit, SUP, to allow for the establishment of a new marijuana retail store on parcels zoned general commercial, GC, located at 3060 Highway 50 East, assessor parcels number APN 008162-19. Heather.
Heather Ferris again for the record. As you likely all remember, the original special use permit for this location was before you earlier this year. After approval of the SUP in January, the applicant realized that it was obtained with the incorrect company name, GTI Nevada LLC, listed as operator instead of Essence Henderson LLC. Per development standards 1.20, a new SUP is required due to the change in operator. The dispensary is not yet in operation, but a building permit has been issued for the necessary modifications. There are no proposed changes to the previously approved marijuana retail store or their operations. I'll go through just to refresh everybody's memory as to what they're proposing and how they're planning to operate. The retail marijuana store will be located on property located on the north side of Highway 50 East, just west of its intersection with Airport Road. The parcel is approximately 0.37 acres in size and zoned general commercial. Marijuana retail stores are allowed in the general commercial zoning district in this location, subject to first obtaining a special use permit. There will be a 4,500 square foot retail marijuana store in the existing building, which is 5,500 square feet. The remaining 1,000 square feet will not be used as part of the marijuana retail space. All marijuana establishments are subject to the requirements of Division 1.20 of the development standards, and the staff report contains an analysis of how this project will meet those standards. And I can go through any of those if you have questions. I will point out that staff has proposed deleting the original conditions 5 through 9, as these have all been addressed with the plans for the building permit. Instead, staff is recommending a new condition 5 that requires conformance with the plans submitted for the building permit. Additionally, as with the original SUP, the applicant has not requested drive-through or curbside services as part of this SUP. If in the future the applicant chose to allow such services, an amendment to the special use permit would be required. I've addressed that in what is now condition 15. There are 7 findings of fact that the Planning Commission must make in the affirmative in order to approve a special use permit. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval subject to the 15 conditions of approval that are included in the staff report. We have not received any written public comment on this project. With that, I'm available for questions, and Will Adler is also here on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Commissioner Borders.
Heather, I've just got an administrative question. The SUP that we passed before, 2023-0453, administratively, how do we make that go away? Is it just shown as
This supersedes that.
is that comment somewhere in the special use permit that say it supersedes it then?
We can certainly add a condition to that.
I just don't
to
want
that effect.
two permits out there all,
Right, we can certainly add a condition to that effect.
okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Cron, any questions? Okay, seeing
No.
none. Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Adler.
Will Adler, representing GTI this fine day. It's a pleasure to be before you guys yet again with this dispensary, and it is the exact same submittal as before. We have adapted the name as there is no amendment process for special use permits, and you must resubmit a full new one outright for such scenarios. But it was just a clerical error on whoever's filled out the application, and we're glad to get this cleaned up today. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you accept the conditions of use that we have?
Yes.
And the additional one says the other one goes away?
I guess the previous conditions went away, but the conditions are attached to the building permit we've already received, and we're sort of 3/4 way underway with the build out of this facility. So yeah, we are in compliance and continue to build out in that way.
Great. And I need to ask for public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board, Commissioners. Denny French, Carson City. I had several questions. I wasn't sure why you removed the conditions 7A, 7B, and 7C out of the Department of Transportation Center's Public Works, the considerations of sidewalk improvement and who was going to do the driveways, if any changes on the in and out, and the expenses that might be put upon the road people, everybody on that end. I'm sorry, I'm a little shaken. The main thing for me is that when I looked at this material, just to let you know, every time you got to click back to a different site, for me at the computer at the library, that time is huge to download each of those. And it would be nice if they just did one load up and then I scrolled down. But that's just a technical thing I deal with because I don't have that other facility. But I appreciate your consideration on maybe looking into that, because there's like 5 different areas to look into for each area. And then the encroachment permit process to consider the right-of-way in and out of the driveway, and how were those resolved? Because I didn't have them in my notes, but you have found that any conditions you put up, he has appreciated and has said he's fine with. And I thought you had a pretty good amount of conditions, so thank you. And at this time, I'm understanding no drive-through and no curb pickup, but that could change. Is that what you're saying? Without a special permit? I'm just putting this out there. It wasn't clear to me, even though I think you just said that, but thank you.
Heather, Steve, do you want to address those, please?
Do you want to see if there's any other public comment
Is
first?
there any other public comment? Seeing none.
Stephen Pote, Development Engineering for the record. As the commission may remember, there was discussion about the proximity of the driveway to the intersection. And there's a condition for the applicant to work with NDOT to limit access. The design does include a pork chop design, which forces traffic to make a right out. There's no limitation on the left in. That's not something that NDOT allowed. And then there is also a requirement to extend a 12-foot multi-use path along the frontage, and that's also part of the design.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, again, we do have condition number 15, which essentially states that this does not approve any drive-through or curbside services. So in the future, if they wanted to add those services, they would have to come back through this process.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Borders,
You ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion if you don't have any questions.
Madam Chair, I move to approve LU 2024-0241 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to conditions of approval contained in the staff report, with an amendment to condition number 5 so that it reads, the project shall supersede LU 2023-0453 and be in substantial compliance, et cetera, with the plans.
Do I have a second? Okay, Commissioner Kilgore seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Who is that? Is it a delay? Okay. Ready? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and the next one is 6C, LU 2024-0243 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding an application for a special use permit, SUP, for an expansion to an existing child care facility on property zoned retail, commercial, and multifamily apartment, RC and MFA, located at 151 East Park Street, assessor parcel number APN 002-37-02.
Good evening, Heather Manzo for the record. So before you is a request to amend a previously approved special use permit to increase the number of children that would be serviced by the child care facility and an associated building expansion. So with that, the daycare has been in business for about 20 years now, and the proposed site plan will address all of the code requirements, including parking for the project, to allow for those additional children to be serviced by the child care facility. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the request. I did want to note that there is on the site plan an area for loading along Park Street that was reviewed by Public Works and determined to meet code. So that is part of their request. And staff was able to make all of the necessary findings for this request and is recommending approval. And the applicant is available if you have questions for them as well.
Okay, I have a question. In regards to this loading area, it looks like it's actually an indent on Park Street, is it?
Yeah, that would be a pullout off of the street.
Okay, the reason I'm asking this is on another issue. We had one that showed a pullout, which when constructed did not have a pullout. So is this a condition of use and will be required in the plans?
Stephen Pote, Development Engineering. Yes, the project will need to be consistent with the plans of the special use permit, so it'll be required.
Okay, and, right, and Commissioner Lloyd?
This is more of a comment rather than a question, but I just want to say that we need childcare in our community, and I thank you for providing extended childcare and additional seats for children in our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooks or Commissioner Cron? Okay,
I have no questions.
all right, and
Madam Chair, if I may ask a quick question. I think the daycare you're referencing is the daycare that went in on Mountain Street. That's not the one you're referencing?
no, I'm not referencing
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's another project that I'm going to bring up probably in
Okay.
staff.
That's okay, because I know on Mountain Street, there was a proposal to do loading and unloading on the street, and that they
They
needed
didn't
to.
have this. This actually was another one that we had approved that showed loading and unloading actually for a jack bus,
Oh,
which did not
Okay.
show up and has not
okay, because
shown
I
up.
wanted to create a distinction with Mountain Street
Yeah,
being
no,
a collector.
no, this is not the
Okay,
daycare. So
got
no,
it.
No
Thank you.
problem at all. Thank you. Let me see. And your name, sir? You're green.
I'm on.
Yeah.
Whoops. For the record, Darren Berger, I'm the architect for the project. And we have read the staff report and we are in agreement with the requirements. And yeah, if you have any questions.
I have a question because it's just come up lately are the operators and owners of the Timbers Daycare here?
Well, my client Travis was here, his wife is here.
Perfect.
Yeah, he
Perfect.
couldn't make it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
I'm not one for public speaking, so I was hoping I could sit back, but
No. No, it's nice to know who's actually doing things in the community, so thank you. Commissioner DeChristopher.
Yes, this is a question that could probably be answered by either one of you. I was excited to see that there is a pull-in for the pickup and drop-off, but that is still a considerable increase in the number of students. And because of the side of the street you're on, I'm assuming most of your parents do the pickup and drop-off coming in off of Main. I think I just dated myself calling it Main Street, but that would be the typical route, correct? Because they're going to be pulling in front of the
generally
daycare.
speaking, yes, people do pull in from Carson Street.
Yeah, and it led me to think about scheduling. Do you have a sense with the additional students, perhaps based on what you're experiencing now, if that is enough space for adequately getting people off of Main Street and into a spot to drop their child or pick them up safely.
Well, the thing with childcare is like there's no set schedule. Like you can drop off in the morning and then pick up, between certain hours. And so some parents will pick up at noon, some pick up at 1, it's varied. So, it's not like school where it's like everybody gets out at 3 and there's like a car line.
So when you offer childcare, they don't do blocks of time? It's just they can do a drop-off okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And do the parents use the additional parking in the back?
It's generally for staff.
Okay.
I mean, some parents do, yes.
Okay. Any further questions? Commissioner Brooks? Commissioner Cron? Hearing none. Okay, do you accept the conditions as outlined?
Yes.
And I'd like to put it at, okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment, I'm sorry. I was really doing good there. Is there any public comment? Okay.
Okay.
Do I have to sit to comment?
Just,
Denny French, and I
You
just
have to
wanted.
do a handstand. It's the Olympics.
I'll do the dismount. Denny French, Carson City, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank them also. My early child development courses didn't lead me into a career, but they sure helped me be appreciative of you all, so thank you very much.
I'd like to entertain a motion. Commissioner Lloyd?
I move to approve the special use permit case number LU-2024-0243 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
I second.
Commissioner Christopher seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Brooks and Cron? Okay, any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. Okay, 16, LU 2024-0238 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to establish a personal storage retail office complex, including indoor and outdoor storage of recreational vehicles, boats, and to allow for a personal storage facility exceeding 14 feet in height next to a residential area on property zoned retail commercial planned unit development, RC-P, located at 3456 North Carson Street, assessor parcels number APN 007-46202.
Heather Ferris again for the record. The subject property is located just southwest of the intersection of North Carson Street and West College Parkway, and commonly known as the Old Kmart. The property is zoned retail commercial and is located in the Silver Oak Planned Unit Development. Commercially zoned parcels within this PUD are limited to those uses which are outlined in the zoning code. The applicant is proposing to convert the existing building into a personal storage retail office complex, including indoor and outdoor storage for recreational vehicles and boats. The building will include 119,000 approximately square feet of indoor personal storage, approximately 21,000 square feet of indoor RV and boat storage, and 37,899 square feet of retail or office use. There will be an additional 53,309 square feet of outdoor screened storage of boats and RVs on the west side of the building. Per Carson City Municipal Code, a personal storage retail office complex is allowed in the RC zoning district, subject to first obtaining a special use permit and complying with the provisions of Division 1.10 of the development standards. Additionally, per Division 1.10 of these standards, storage facilities that are adjacent to residential areas may not exceed 14 feet in height. The existing building is 24 feet in height, obviously exceeding the maximum of 14 for personal storage facilities. adjacent to residential uses. Therefore, the applicant is also seeking a use permit to exceed the height limitation. There's a detailed analysis of how the application meets the required development standards, beginning on page 3 of the staff report. I can go over any of those with you at your request, but I'd like to highlight just a couple of key items. Subsection 1 requires the incorporation of retail and/or office space into personal storage facilities when it's located in the retail commercial zoning district. There's some existing space at this location. However, an additional 300.83 lineal feet of retail office space is proposed along the two frontages, which will create compliance, and that space is shown here in the blocks of yellow, orange, and green. Subsection 5 speaks to outdoor storage. In the RC zoning district, outdoor storage is allowed as an accessory use, incidental to a primary permitted use or a conditional use, and subject to the standards of Division 1.12. Consistent with Division 1.12, the outdoor storage of boats and RVs will be enclosed by a 100% site obscuring wall, which you can see in this top north elevation. You can see to the right of the screen the wall that's proposed to be installed. The outdoor storage will also not occupy more than 20% of the lot area. It constitutes approximately 6.6% of the lot area. And the outdoor storage will not be located within required yards or setbacks. Additionally, as I noted, the applicant is seeking a special use permit to allow for the height of the personal storage facility adjacent to residential uses to exceed 14 feet in height, as the building already exists and already exceeds that 14-foot height limitation, and this project proposes an adaptive reuse of an existing building. There are 7 findings of fact that the Planning Commission must make in the affirmative in order to approve a special use permit. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval, subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report. We have received several written public comments regarding this project, including concerns with the use of the existing condensers, the need for more residential uses in the area. Also received some supporting the project, and then another that outlined concerns regarding the project's compliance with the existing reciprocal easement and operation agreement encumbering this parcel and neighboring parcels. Much like CC&Rs, the city is not a party to this agreement and does not enforce the agreement. Therefore, the commission's review of the special use permit request must be based on the merits of the project and the ability to make the required findings. With that, I'm available for questions, and Jeff Frame is here representing the project and may wish to address the commission.
Have Jeff come up in this group. Green. You need
Make
to
it
push it one
green.
more time and make it green.
All right. Got to hit it twice. Good afternoon, Jeff Frame, architect, representative for the applicant.
Okay.
And-
Who's your friend?
He is actually the applicant. He is the owner, Michael
okay,
Hariri.
Terrific.
Hi, Michael Hariri.
Okay. Nice to have you here. Okay. All right. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the project and why you came up with this idea? Can you do that?
Okay, sure. I've actually been for multiple owners working on this project for about 16 years. We've come up with different ideas, and this is one that actually economically works. And so we, Michael just bought the building here about six months ago or so, and came up with this idea. We worked with staff, went through the major project review, and came up with an idea to make it work. I want to be clear on one thing: is the 14-foot high limit. The reason we're here for that part of the special use permit is because of the existing building only. The outdoor storage wall is only 14 feet high. So it's a completely, like we said, obscure wall. You can't see through it. You can't see into the yard. It's finished on top. There's no razor or concertina wire or any stuff like that going on. It looks like just a natural extension of the building on the west side.
And you don't expect any of the units to be higher than 14 feet?
They're not allowed to be any higher than 14 feet, yeah.
And now you've also incorporated, restaurant and office space and other different things?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we've set aside, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, it's 60% of the frontage on both the east side, which faces the parking lot, which also faces Carson Street, and then on the north side, which faces College Parkway. A minimum of 60% of those frontages need to be approved use as retail, commercial, or food and beverage. So in the green area over there we're planning on food and beverage. The orange areas are new retail, commercial. The yellow area in the corner had a fitness center tenant. And then the yellow area up in the upper right, of course, is the old auto shop portion. So we're looking at different uses for those.
And to Commissioner Borders, do you have some questions
Yeah,
for the applicant?
Could you explain to me your dry stack storage concept as to, how it's going to operate? People are going to bring their boat in, you're going to stack it, they're going to haul their trailer away?
Yeah, so what'll happen is if it's boat storage and they're stacked, then yeah, they will bring it in. We'll stack it on whatever racks. Now, they're probably only going to be stacked too high or so because we're limited to 14 feet.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get up,
I'm just worried about how you get that forklift in there if you're going nose to tail with those boats. It just doesn't seem like it's going to fit very well.
Well, on the outside, we're going.
On the inside, I don't have a problem.
Okay, so on the outside, we can approach it from the side. That's how we'll do it. So if they're nose to tail, we can still get it from the side and lift them out.
Yeah, but the forklift lifts them nose to tail, doesn't lift them from the side. You'll crack the keel if you.
We'll have to, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've 35 years stacking boats.
Okay, all right. I'll take your word for that, Commissioner Borders, yeah.
You
Yeah.
typically forklift them
From the end.
nose to tail.
Okay,
On the chine.
okay. So we'll have to order it
And-
and lay it out to where you
Yeah,
can do
and
that.
that was
Yeah.
what concerned me
Okay.
about that. I don't have any problem with stacking inside.
Okay.
But
all
the
right.
outside just seemed to be almost more trouble than it was worth.
Yeah, I think we just outlined an area of where the boat storage would be. We didn't really put any racks or anything in there yet.
Okay.
So we have an area, we don't have it
Okay.
obviously
All
figured
right.
out. And obviously, I'm not going to be the one stacking it, so yeah.
And I have a question too on that, is that if there is not going to be people in there, when they're in dry storage doing any kind of bottom paint, that type of stuff?
No,
It is
it's
just going to be storage only?
storage only, yeah.
Okay, and what would the hours of operation be? I think that's going to be really important to the neighbors if you're going to have forklifts and beep, beep, beeps and back and
I think
forth.
we're limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. if is that the?
That's correct. They're limited by code.
Okay, terrific. Now, those are some of the things I think we need to bring up here is the noise and so forth.
Sure.
Because I think one of the deals is that I got thinking about this is that, initially when you were taking away the docks, but I also realized with a retail operation, a big one that has docks, it's usually a 24/7 operation.
Correct.
With the lights and the people loading and pallets and additional noise.
Yeah.
So this is only 7 to 7.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioner DeChristopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, knowing that on the backside, you're going to have that type of activity and things stored on the outside, I know that will pose a concern for the residential section on that side. Can you speak to the lighting and specifically how that's going to work in terms of height?
Well, the lighting will be designed so there's no overspill onto neighboring parcels. I mean, that's we have to do a photometric plan. That's code that we'll have to present that in for a building permit. So we'll have to show that the lighting lights inward and doesn't spill over into any neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you. And then I have two other questions. Bear with me.
Certainly.
The second one is, we're talking about these other spaces, retail. office space, are there potential tenants already on deck?
I think the owner's working on that. I don't have any, do you have any knowledge of that?
There are, yeah. We like to keep them in line with the neighborhood family retail center. So the 3 spaces that are already existing, we'd like to bring them back. So we're actively looking for them. We have a few prospects. The restaurant, the gym, and the auto shop.
Okay. And I will say, the reason I ask is when I look at that area, typically the largest building in a mall area is the anchor store. And anchor stores are usually, who's residing in them is a highly recognized brand. And that helps bring in, of course, the other tenants, as well as being something that helps the community feel proud, helps the surrounding businesses feel like there's added value to it, to their coming on board. So that is a concern of mine, which I realize may be outside my purview, but it is mentioned quite frequently during the master plan updates that we're involved in. So just background on that, so you know why I'm asking. The last thing is the parking lot. Are there any plans to do with this? I did not see the parking lot noted, unless, Heather, I missed that. But that is a huge concern, especially if you are trying to court other tenants coming into that area. I'm sure you've seen it. We have grass growing up, major cracks. It's in need of resurfacing for many years. And I recognize that was recently inherited by you, but just calling that out as a concern.
Sure. I believe we have crack sealing, resealing, and restriping. I believe those are in the comments and part of the revitalization process of the center. You're absolutely right.
Any further questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Cron,
Madam Chair, I had a couple.
please,
Yeah, a couple. I'm sorry.
go forward.
Okay. I wanted to follow up on Commissioner DeChristopher's parking lot thought. I like many citizens in Carson City drive by that, and the landscaping is a challenge out there. And I believe it was on the drawings that you talk about refurbishing the parking lot or refurbishing the landscaping. And I'm curious, what does that mean in your mind? Refurbishing the landscaping mean to the community as well as to your center?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we want to bring it back to what it was before. So nothing overgrown, nice, green, well kept. So we just signed a contract for maintenance and upkeep, and you're gonna see that come back to life. And then for the we also have we have people coming out, for the parking lot as well. Take a look before, get it taken care of before the winter. But you should see the whole center, all the landscaping up to par in the next few months, at least before winter. So.
Great, wonderful. I wanted to talk a little bit about the storage in back as well. Are you planning to stack the boats in the back, or is that, I guess I'm still not quite sure what the back storage, the outdoor back storage is going to be. So are we going to be looking at stacking boats out there, or just parking RVs out there? Just a little more clarification for me, please.
A majority of the outdoor storage is for parking RVs. There is, you can see it on the site plan. They're all angled in, so they come in the south side. It's a one-way drive-through. They park, and then when they are ready to exit, they exit out the north side. So I would say about 2/3 to 3/4 of the area is dedicated to our outdoor RV storage. The boat stacking is a little area in the southwest corner of the outdoor storage. It's not even 1/4 of the area. So a majority of it is recreational vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Brooks, do you have any questions? Seeing none. Okay,
Oh, Madam Chair, one more question, and it had to do with
Certainly.
one of the public comments. There was some concern by the residents to the south about those condensers. I believe that was the condenser noise. Anyway, some noise that would be potentially concerning to the neighborhood to the south. Does the applicant understand the public comment and kind of can address that at this point? Are they going to run those condensers?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure. Are you, Commissioner, are you talking about the, what condensers are you talking about? Are you talking about the ones that are already there or the ones?
No, the existing ones that are there. The comment, I'm trying to pull up now the comments or the public comments, but there was some late material public comments that came in, and there was concern related to the noise on the, I believe it was the south side of the building with some of the existing units there. And I'm sorry, I don't have the public
Okay,
comments
so
in front of me at the
I
moment.
can
but-
address that. So the existing condensers and the existing mechanical that's there is all going to be, it's going to have to be brand new for the operation. So everything's going to be removed. So the existing condensers that are there were most likely for the walk-in coolers and the refrigerated cases for the old Kmart store. We won't be using those.
Actually, I want to just clarify. So there's two different types of condensers. Condensers for refrigeration, which I believe have already been removed. All of the old Kmart stuff for refrigeration specifically have been removed, and they will stay removed. So I'm kind of unclear as to if she was asking whether we're going to turn on the ACs for the building. And the answer is yes, we are going to use they've only been used for 10 years. They're brand new. So are we going to turn on the condensers on the roof? The short answer is yes, but not anything to do with refrigeration. So it's quite a bit less noise. And I'm not sure where the idea came from that someone from far away in the residential section is going to hear those. But it's going to be considerably less than when Kmart was originally built, so.
I have another question for you because
No,
we,
and thank you. Oh,
sorry. There's
no, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm sorry. One of these things is this area is in the night sky area. And my question is that with outdoor storage and so forth for security and things, are they going to be the high like the Kmart ones? Because I know that the lights that were done with Kmart preceded our night sky requirements and preceded, even I think our observatory at that point. So are these going to all be lower or capped, or are they going to be addressed, the existing ones and the ones that are going to be on the back facing more of the residential and back towards the west side?
Well, the ones on the west side towards the residential will all have to be new. And so they'll have to conform to our current night sky ordinance. We can't put anything taller in there, and they'll have to
What
be,
about the ones in the parking lot? Because those almost look like the ones that they have on the football field of Carson High. And you can see them clear across the valley.
yeah, we'd have to have those looked at and see what's going on. I'd have to go by there at night. We'd have to go by there at night and see, and have those analyzed.
I think that just
Yeah.
because this is really in an area that is in a transition on that night sky, that would be something that, can we consider that in this application?
So I think you'd have to look at the findings. So when you look at the code, if they're not proposing to change any of the existing lighting or change all of the existing lighting, only the new lighting would be subject to our standards, unless you can find a way to tie it back to the findings.
That's tough because some of those lights haven't been on in years too. So,
Actually, I think that a lot of them are on at night, if I'm not mistaken. We do have them connected, so, and they do serve the other owners of Northtown, so that's definitely something to look into and make sure.
okay. Any further questions? Commissioner Lloyd, do you have any questions? Okay, all right, we'll bring public comment, please. And when you come in, please remember, please sign in and state your name, and you're limited to the 3 minutes, and the clock is on the wall, and we can't answer questions for you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Leslie Bryan Hart. I'm an attorney and I represent CNA Investments. CNA's manager is Nicole Ballardini, and she is here with me today. We are here today to ask the Commission to defer making a decision on this agenda item. As you know from the letter that we submitted to the Commission, we believe the proposed use violates the reciprocal operating easement agreement. And although we understand that that is a matter of private contract before the parties, we think that it would have been appropriate for the applicant to meet with us prior to submitting the application to determine if the proposed use would be acceptable to us, or if not, to perhaps reach an agreement on a proposed use, given that we have for many years attempted to work with the other property owners in Northtown Plaza to amend these deed restrictions that, quite frankly, are quite out of date. Unfortunately, those discussions over the years led us nowhere, and ultimately my client had to bring a lawsuit 7 years ago to seek court involvement to determine and conclude that those deed restrictions are out of date and should no longer be enforced due to a change in circumstances at Northtown Plaza. That litigation is ongoing. We are in the Nevada Supreme Court right now and anticipating a decision between, hopefully in the coming months. So the predecessor and interest to the applicant's interest in the property has been resisting our efforts to amend those deed restrictions and has aggressively opposed the litigation that we filed in order to, again, amend these restrictions or have a court find them unenforceable due to the changed circumstances. I think you all are very much aware of certainly what's happened in that shopping center. My client suffers from a 70% or so vacancy rate. We've been unable to attract tenants in part because of these restrictions, and we find it inequitable that somebody would then come forward with a use that does not conform to the existing deed restrictions while its predecessor in interest has refused to negotiate with us over an amendment that would allow the entire shopping center to benefit from these much-needed changes to the deed restrictions. So that certainly is our primary concern. We find it simply a matter of equity. I think there's some efficiencies that also could be accomplished if they had come to us ahead of time. As I indicated, we've been involved in litigation for many years over a prior proposed use that was believed to be not in conformity. And we think that, of course, had those issues been resolved on the front end, as we think would have been appropriate here, we think it would have been more efficient and in the best interest of all of the property owners at the Northtown Plaza. Thank you.
You signed in?
I did.
Okay, great. Further public comment?
I'm Donna Kuster DePaul. I'm the one who sent the email on the condenser units. And like I said, I wasn't sure if there were air conditioning or from the freezer sections. I'm a resident of West Nye Lane and have been there since 1988. So I have experienced a lot of concerns in the original development of the PUD at Silver Oak. My main concern is I just don't want to hear that noise again. So it was very disturbing. You couldn't open your windows. People along our street not all of them have AC. And it was very uncomfortable to work outside or have your windows open. So again, I don't want the new facility to go without air conditioning by any means. And speaking with my neighbors on my street, no one has objections to the project. We look forward to seeing that building utilized, and this seems like a decent proposal. We have had a lot of riffraff since no one's there, and we look forward to hopefully having them as a good neighbor. But I really would like the air conditioning or freezer. He's mentioned that I believe the freezer condensers have been disconnected. So, and again, I'm not sure which the noise was coming from, but I just want to tell you it was a lot of awful noise. And we have Park Place there now, part of Silver Oak Development that was never there prior to this. So it was just a lot of noise, and I just don't want to hear it again. I appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment? You can come on, you can come in and sign in later, but just hit the green button and state your name.
My name is Gene Munnings, and I'm not only a resident of Carson City, I have a business here. And we were forced out of business this year by a marijuana dispensary that you are all working on. And somehow they still think that we still own that building. We never owned it. But before then, we went to look at the former owner of the Kmart building, and he said, oh, no, we don't want that kind of retail in here. It's just a gift store, and it was a nursery, but I will never do that again. So I'm supporting anything to go into that building because it's been sitting vacant way too many years. Because I used to live on Imperial when they built it. That's how I remember. Oh, look, and it Kmart, and it was open on Thanksgiving. The first thing was ever open on Thanksgiving. So I'm supporting it, and I wanted to try to get it, move my retail from storage units back to a retail store again. And that's why I would support it.
And if you finish, you can just sign in. Go from there. Okay. More public comment?
Hi, I'm Laura Carlson. My house backs up to John Menkins Park, so I have a couple concerns. I tend to believe that I'm going to be in support of this project. It's been vacant and an eyesore for so many years. It's disgusting that not the current owner, but the owner of all those years wasn't even responsible for the parking lot. There are kids riding bikes. Some companies use it now for their buses to park there 2-3 days continually without moving the buses. I don't know who they're busing in or what the people are. I did notice in the last 6 months or so that the homeless people are no longer there. So just myself personally suspected something was coming. I was out of town when I got the notice, so I'm a little bit behind in research and figuring out what's going on. But as a resident there, you approved, I believe you approved 52 townhomes to be built and purchased by homeowners, high luxury townhomes. We were told they're going to be purchased by the legislatures that are coming in and big corporations and law firms, and that didn't happen. They turned out to be rentals, which is, we need, I'm okay with it, but I'd like to be told after it's been approved. We never got a notice. Just one day there's a rental sign that goes up after they're already built. 52 units right on the corner of College Parkway and Oak Ridge, sorry. So that's a lot of traffic. So now we've got the college kids coming down College Parkway at massive amounts of speeds. No police anywhere. I've only lived here 6 years, but I can't tell you when I've seen a policeman on College Parkway watching the speed. You've just approved a housing development across the way in the Silver Oak Golf Course. right in the middle of the fairways, and you have a road coming out, those people are going to turn left onto Silver Oak Parkway with all the landscape, and they have no vision to be able to turn left there with speeding traffic from the college coming down and all the traffic from the 52 residential townhomes now, which is something I think you can deal with and can be fixed. Don't let those people turn left. They can go back up through that development. But to be able to turn left, we're looking at some serious accidents, hurt people, as far as I'm concerned. So number one is traffic. If you have an RV coming out of this development and turning left on College Parkway, there are a lot of people up there. Oh, I have a time limit?
Yes,
Sorry.
3 minutes,
Okay.
yes.
Lighting, huge problem. But honestly, I would like to see this go. I just want a whole lot of concern over the traffic and the lighting and the
And I need you
cross
to-
traffic.
I need you to sign in, please. Great, thank you.
Hello, Heather Coe. I agree with everything she said, but I said those were my concerns and no one would move into them. They would probably be rentals. Now they are. And there are also 10 homes on Oak Ridge for sale because of it. So you're actually, with the things that you guys are approving, you're driving more people out. This is not why they bought their homes. And the traffic is going to be horrific. And there's a median. And on top, we have Ormsby Rehab, which was my huge concern in the first place. There is an ambulance there several times a day. And then there's a senior center, assisted living, where there's an ambulance in and out of there. And that is the only way to go up and down. There's a median right in the middle. So it's not like if there was an emergency, someone can actually get somewhere quickly. And there is a problem with people speeding down there. I almost got hit the other day. My other thing is, I don't understand. I have wanted something to be put back in there, but something that is enjoyable for the people on this end of town. And we have not had anything like that. We've been ignored. We have an eyesore that is a McDonald's, which someone needs to be fined because it is so disgusting. And same thing with Kmart. No one's ever been fined or been made to clean up that area. And one of these kids that are riding their bikes and skateboarding is going to get hurt, especially over by the McDonald's. But I don't understand why something can't be put on hold until their litigation is through. Because there are things that I was excited about to go in there, and you guys said no. Okay? There was the casino that was supposed to, anything that would have filled up the space and brought more people over by where Nicole is. And it's constantly a no. And instead, we have to look at two huge eyesores on either side, the McDonald's and on the other side, the Kmart. But the traffic, especially with RVs, needs to be taken into consideration. There needs to be another way for them to go in and out because it's not going to be possible without accidents where they want to do it right now. Thank you.
Heather, sign in. Heather, sign, please.
Oh, she signed me.
Did she sign you in? Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
Can I ask for a couple days? Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Chair and Commission. You know, if you got the backstory on this, you'd have to have days to just get it figured out. And I appreciate that Attorney Fenmore brought it up because I was wondering if it would come up or if they had resolved and decided as a group of owners and or at least people involved that they had made an agreement and they had a cohesive deal. But to me, this is an institutionalized looking development, and it certainly sounds like it's going to be a wonderful place for people to put things, but I think it would be more appropriate in an industrial or slash area. That area has such potential. I thought perhaps that the college was going to take it in as perhaps even dormitories at one time, and other considerations for their expansion on several of their different programs. The fact that they didn't get involved with that might not be that they didn't try, but that because of the different involvements or the peoples that are involved in this piece of property and as a whole couldn't come to agreement. And so that's unfortunate. I don't want to say no, but I'm finding there's concerns. It's a perfect existing, a present existing sites featuring the natural nature trees are to be protected. So you know I'm going to go there. The 14-foot high extra facility for a private storage seems sort of like, okay, you've got everything else for storage and you have to build something for your personal storage, and that sort of bothers me because it's exceeding a height limit that most people would do. The wall around it to keep it from being noticeable to me because of its architectural situation, and they don't really depict it in the drawings or the depictions. Isn't there a length requirement or a restriction on how long a wall can be without some sort of architectural invite or a structure to keep it from just being flat walled or fenced? The 20-foot wall that's supposed to be the buffer zone between the properties, it says down on here, Chapter 6, D, Chapter 6, that number 3 would provide the height and distance and setback, transition and connections to the surrounding development and such, but that I have to jump because we're running out of time. It says down here, as we provide a 20-foot landscape buffer between the single family's residence and properties and our project. Well, I don't think we is a very professional name. It's actually suggesting to me it could be the city, but then it goes off into say our property, our project. It's our project in a way, so that could infer that we're responsible, but thank you very much for consideration.
Any further public comment?
Sign in, right?
Yes, please.
Sign on in.
Nope, you turn it off.
Got it.
Ready? I'm Tara Maddox, and I know that we're talking about the Kmart building, but I thought it was a good opportunity to just on record say that I would love to see the city address the McDonald's building. I think that if we're talking about revitalization of that area, that we should look at that. I mean, I think the owner of the McDonald's building should be held responsible for cleaning up that mess. And we discussed landscaping over there, and the Northtown landscaping's perfect. And I agree that there's a concern over there with the landscaping, but so the current owner of the other parcel pays for landscaping in the green area coming into the center. But even while we're waiting for approval for anything in that Kmart building, they should be responsible for the retention basin. It's no longer being mowed, and everything looks terrible out there. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention, and hopefully someone can do something about the McDonald's building, or at least there's pressure for that guy to take responsibility and clean it up, because the revitalization of that area, that's essential for that. You know, we're not going to have actual revitalization of that area with a big mess right there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Come on. Push the button green. Yep, that's fine.
No, push the button, make it green. There you go.
Perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate you. First of all, thank you for your service here. My name is Scott Tate. I represent Northern Nevada Comstock Investments, which owns the horrible McDonald building there. And I say, you know, it's a challenge But the facts of the matter are, we bought the building and spent in excess of $500,000. Within 12 months, we were sued, as some of the earlier representatives indicated. And so that's been tied up in litigation. Of course, as a result of that, we're grossly scared and to do any kind of development because it's hard to move forward till that's resolved. So I'm here to say that we look forward to developing that property. I get a call every other month for something to go in there, but you can't do anything till there's some clarity. And then we definitely want to make the facility economically viable. And what we have here is a gentleman who's invested a lot of money under the circumstances and conditions, and who's willing to invest even more money into the project to make it viable. Anyone, I've been doing business for 20 years in Carson City. First of all, I'd like to say I love Carson City. Staff does an exceptional job here, and all the administrations have been so supportive of the business activity. And for that, we're very, very grateful and blessed. But we get this project moved forward, and it's money to clean the place up and get it going. And, if you want to use another purpose, let's just create a little economic activity, and they'll transition to something that is more conducive. I mean, this is all economic driven, but we got to start somewhere. And thank the good Lord, we got someone here that is willing to invest to come forward. Again, I don't think I wear that. Thank you, ma'am. And so that's all I have to say. But again, the big thing is just thank you. You're investing your time here. You're not paid enough to deal with this. And so we really, really appreciate you. And we appreciate the work you do for Carson City. It's a really special place. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Not here.
We're not paid any, by the way.
Yeah, we don't know. We even bring our own snacks.
For the record, again, Darren Berger. I live here in Carson City. I didn't come here tonight to comment on this, but I'm excited about it. That property has been an eyesore for a long time, and what Mr. Tate has said, I echo what he's saying, and I know him as a businessman, and what he says about, the investment and creating some vibrancy, it's going to take care of all those concerns, like, getting that retention basin mode and looking good, because, businessmen want, and women, sorry, want a good-looking property that's going to attract people. So I just wanted to say that I'm in support of this project, and I know Mr. Frame quite well, and I know he will do a fantastic job on sprucing up this building. It'll be a good-looking project for Carson City. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to bring it back to you, Heather, for any questions, any answers?
Thanks. Before I hand it over to Stephen, I think he might want to address some of the traffic comments. But I wanted to just really quickly clarify a couple of things. So Denny brought up the excessive height. So the request for the excessive height is for the existing building itself. So under our development standards, when you have a personal storage facility next to residential use, you're limited to 14 feet in height. The existing building is 24 feet in height. So in order to allow for this type of use, we would need to either amend the code or allow for a special use permit, which there is allowance in our code for a special use permit for excessive height. So that's the route that we took. The 14-foot wall in the back is new. That does not require any special use permit for the wall to be at 14 feet. The 20-foot landscape buffer is shown actually in the southwest corner here. They will be eliminating some of those parking spaces to increase that landscape buffer. That is directly adjacent to the residential zoning district there, and there are homes in that location. I think that's it, aside from The issue of traffic, everything else was already discussed.
Stephen Pote for the record. Also wanted to touch on the basin. I will ask our stormwater manager to take a look at that. Odds are that the tall grass isn't going to be impeding the function of that infrastructure, so it might not be something that's enforceable, but we can at least take a look at it. On the traffic side of things, for this project, traffic and sewer and water are all kind of in the same camp, which is that compared to the previous use, it's actually a decrease in the impact. So anticipating much fewer trips coming out, and our transportation division did take a look at this, and they did not have any concerns with site distance at this location.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Brooks?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Less a question than an observation for my fellow commissioners.
Is this Commissioner
The
Cron?
last time we,
Oh,
no, this is Commissioner Brooks.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The last time we had a project come up that was also facing pushback from neighbors and involved parties and was under potential litigation, the commission decided to let that litigation or some sort of agreement on the private side get sorted out before the commission considered what to do about the request. Whether or not that was the correct decision, I don't know, but just as a matter of consistency, I bring it up because it seems similar to what's going on here.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, Commissioner Cron?
Yeah, I've been I've been looking at condition finding number 2 and finding number 7, and I have been, as I've read them, I've been very pleased when you start looking at this development in that capacity. You know, the building is going to be redone. They're trying to deal with some of the mitigation in the neighborhoods. I really feel that they're trying to very strongly address finding number 2 and finding number 7. And I, especially as you read those findings, you talk about the lights that has been brought up, the light issues that have been brought up, and how they're going to have to address that appropriately based on Carson City development standards. You know, they're going to look at the landscaping. I really see this as really a viable project for that structure and that development. And this is what we're going to be looking at. I mean, in all honesty, we've been talking about, with the update of the master plan, we've been talking a lot about these reuses and adaptive reuses. And this is kind of one that's staring us in the face. It's kind of like, yeah, this would be what I would consider, at least in my perception, of what we're going to be looking at along these, along the Highway 50 corridor, along the North Carson Street corridor. How do we take these properties, and with the use of zoning and the use of the different findings and conditions that we have, to create an opportunity for economic development? And so I certainly understand Commissioner Brooks's hesitancy based on the recent application we had related to the horse barn, but this is a fairly big thing. And I think the city, based on the findings, I think this is a stronger, application than the other one. We don't have anywhere near the neighbor opposition that we had either. So I would, or at least my thought is that I think the commission should move forward with finding to move forward with the project based on the findings and subject to the conditions. That's just my thought.
Thank you. Commissioner Kilgore?
I just wanted to make a few comments based on some of the concerns that were raised. And as was already stated, of course, the use is going to be significantly lower than previous. We're talking parking is a lot of what's backing the plan here. That's going to be a lot less. And I've been in a few think tanks in the past that were based on this location and what could be put in, the money that was going to be required to go into this location to fix it up. And we're talking a lot, and that's when money went a lot further. In this case, I think it's a much better use just for the fact that this is going to require so much less traffic, as in opposed to some of those ideas that were tossed around when I was part of those think tanks for this location. And it's, it's not the golden swing, but, I wouldn't consider it a swing and a miss either. I've got to say that of all the ideas that were brought up for this location, this one's going to require a lot less. And also for traffic concerns, it's going to be a lot less than not only its original use, but any of the other future uses that were brought up at that time. So aside from that, of course, there was the concerns about the noise. And, in my not so extensive but very seasoned time doing refrigeration and HVAC, I got to say that when these units for this building were installed, it was open in '94. So those units would have been probably a year old, 2 years old at that point in time. And there's been some massive leaps forward in the last 30 years, and not only with sound pollution, but also, of course, just overall efficiency, right? So yeah, not only sound pollution efficiency, but also overall efficiency with refrigeration and HVAC units. So that should be a much less concern than I think some people had. Of course, those units 30 years ago were pretty noisy. You could hear those from a minute away. I'm really excited to see anything go in here that's going to be less serious than some of the other ideas that have been raised in the past for it, especially with the concern of traffic, which I have a lot in that area. And, the parking lot's a mess. I'm glad to see that's a big part of getting this cleaned up, and happy to hear everyone here is doing their best they can, which is an awful lot. So I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thank you. Commissioner Borders?
Originally, I kind of had the same feelings as Commissioner Brooks on, trying to get the groups together. However, when you start to look at the documentation, the REOA, which is their governing document, apparently sets forth some requirements for that subdivision. And I guess my first question, and I guess originally one of the people that testified said that they're trying to make it go away, and I would endorse that, because I would turn the event around and say, well, how's it worked for you in the last 23 years? It hasn't been able to bring anything in, so there's something wrong with it. They seem to be wanting it to go away. The new developer wants it to go away, obviously. Now, the problem is it doesn't seem that like they've talked to each other. And they probably need to do that. And one of the ways we helped that along the last time was to make them wait and tell them to come back to us in 30 days after they had a conversation. I'm not sure that works with this instance because they're both on the same side of the log. Both of them pretty much want the ROEA to go away or to be rewritten such that it would fit what should and can go in there now, not what ought to go in there 25 years ago. And I'm immensely excited. One of the things that I told the Board of Supervisors when they first appointed me to this position, they said, what do you want to see happen in Carson City? And I said, I want to see Jack's Bar fixed up. All right? And it took 8 years to get that done. One of the last things they asked me to do the last time I was reappointed, I said, the Ormsby House and Kmart. And by God, we got somebody in Kmart. And I think there's a way to make it work, but I would like to see something start. And that's kind of the way I feel about it. So that's me.
Commissioner Lloyd?
When I was the library director, I can't tell you how many times people said, you should put the library in Kmart. I don't think that was a viable option then. I think this is a much better option. I will say, like, as an owner and business person, you know, that person has the ability to choose based on what business pencils out in a space. This might not be my first option of something to put in that space, but I'm not the one investing the money. I'm not the one that bought that building. So I think this is a good use. I think it meets the findings. Though I would, you know, this is just my opinion, would like to see consideration for night sky lighting. And I think that was noted, and consideration will be brought for existing lighting, though it's not required by Carson City. And I think that having something in the Kmart building is important. I live, as the crow flies, maybe a half a mile away from there. So I think it's important to have something there.
Mr. Christopher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate what Commissioner Brooks was saying in terms of consistency and how we handle this as closely aligned as we did with the other. I do see the differences that Commissioner Borders brought up, so I feel comfortable moving forward with it. And when I look at the findings in my purview as a planning commissioner, I believe this meets the findings. I just note that I know there are folks out there that feel they have waited a very long time and to see something go in. And oftentimes when we go longer, the expectation becomes higher for what goes in. And I include myself in that group. But I do see the benefits of getting in there. And the tipping point for me was you showing up tonight. That means a lot. I'm hoping that the other thing can resolve itself by discussion. And because I do think you're on the same side of this and it can work out for the benefit of our city. So I'm relying on that. I'm relying on you to have some conversations so that we can continue having everyone benefit and attracting other new and interesting businesses to dress up that corridor. And having said that, I hope that this gets off the ground sooner than later, because I think when people see it, when they see the parking lot improvements, when they see activity over there looking vital, it will be a winner.
Okay, and this has been a crazy property for years, and a lot of people realize I'm a commercial broker in my other world. And going into this building and the difficulty that we had with the previous ownership was a challenge. And this idea is something, as the other commissioners have said, is that we've been doing a lot of on the listening tour on the master plan, and we have a lot of large buildings, and we're going to have more with the state doing their different transitions and so forth, and people not wanting to go back to work. So to see more of a mixed use development rather than saying, okay, we're waiting for the big box, because the big boxes, most people are admit they shop online or, you know, do other things specially. They don't necessarily go to a store and support that store. So I look at this and I realize there's challenges as far as the litigation. I realize I don't know what the status is on the land lease. There's a whole bunch of different issues that are out there. But I think as a commissioner, I appreciate these things coming up because I don't think they're ideas that the general public is even aware of, that these are what the challenges is. It is not a situation where the ownership of that corner, that entire corner, wants it to remain the same. They want to see different things happen, and they're not holding it up as individuals. My question is this litigation truly has been going on for quite some time. So it would be really, and I would defer to our district attorney on this one, is our special use permits are limited on time. And one of the things that we consider, we've been seeing a lot of our special use permits that have expired and they need extensions and have to come back. So the litigation is unknown. It has been going on for a long time. The discussions maybe or hopefully will begin. But our limit for special use permit is how many years? 2? 1?
It's 1 year with the possibility of an administrative extension after that year if it's requested. And then after that, if they need additional time, they have to come back to the Planning Commission.
And just to add to that, it's not automatic. After the 1 year, although I have the authority to grant an additional year, that's not automatic. And the reason for the time limits is because circumstances may change. The water in a pipe may be more because of a different development. Traffic may be different. The neighbors may be different because enough time's gone by. So those are all inputs to consider.
Because that would be my question. Would you like to come up as the applicant? And is this is before us, and I think that you have gotten the flavor of the commission is that we are supportive of it. Is the 1 year achievable?
Green light.
Thank you so much. So is 1 year achievable to get the building back into service? So,
No.
To start.
To start.
oh, to start, oh, definitely. Definitely,
Okay.
so,
And the litigation, that none of that would be hampering you, because this is one of the things, is that when people come back to us and they say, oh, gosh, the litigation went on longer, oh, we found another problem, then we have to revisit it just as it's brand new.
sure,
you may
and
have a
I
different
appreciate
commission.
that. I appreciate that concern, definitely. People coming here and throwing out words like litigation and REOA. Definitely not the venue for those. I think everyone agrees, not the venue to use those terms here. I think Heather also mentioned that. But the current litigation does not affect us from bringing in the restaurant, the gym, the auto shop, any of the retail, anything that we want to do in the back, any of our uses that we're proposing. Just a little bit about myself. As a developer, I stay away from anything that negatively impacts the community. So casinos, marijuana shops, smoke shops, anything, recycling centers, anything that expands the current, riffraff situation of a lot of these. Not that this is an underdeveloped area, but it's definitely been vacant long enough. But their litigation, they want to bring in a casino. They've been litigating it for 7 years. Has nothing to do with us bringing our building back into service or starting our construction. So I hope that answers everyone's questions about that.
We just want you to be aware. I mean, that's what we're looking at, is basically we want you to be aware that there may be some challenges and so forth, and that this is a project that we particularly like. And the question is the special use permit for the entire project or only for portions of it? Can he come in and do portions and do, partial building permits for retail, partial building permits for restaurants,
So the retail use,
Is
the office
approved.
use is allowed by right, so it's a primary permitted use in the RC zoning district. In order to have the personal storage, they do have to have that that retail office component in the retail commercial zoning district. So it's the overall project, but if what they want to come in with first is retail space, that's allowed by right. So it's the personal storage portion that requires the retail and office and then requires the SUP. But if all we're looking at is retail, there's no SUP required.
Okay, and that clarification. Any further questions of the commissioners? No? Okay. Any additional conditions, anything?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, then I think I'm going to call for a motion. Oh, so you have accepted all the conditions of use for the special use permit with the understanding that we cannot, we can issue a special use permit. However, you still need to work with your neighbors.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, like to entertain a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve LU 2024-0238 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner
I'll
Khan.
second.
Okay, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, wait, okay. Commissioner Cron and Commissioner Brooks, are you affirmative?
Affirmative.
Okay,
Yes, Commissioner Cron, yes.
okay, thank you. Commissioner Kilgore, can you please, let me know for the record what why you would say nay?
There seems to be an issue with the surrounding and peaceful enjoyment of the public, so in which case I have to vote no.
Okay, all right, and motion carries. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good
All
luck.
Yep. Okay. And do we
Take
want
a
a
break?
short recess? Short recess and come back in how about 10 minutes? That clock's wrong, so I don't have a real clock. 10 till, please. Okay. Planning Commission recessing until 10 till 7. Please. reconvene the planning commission for July 31st and go on to, let's see. Yes, 6E. For possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board concerning an application for an ordinance amending Section 1.121 of the Title 18 Appendix, the Carson City Development Standards, CCDS, of the Carson City Municipal Code, CCMC, to eliminate the requirement that materials in or equipment be stored at heights not to exceed the height of a wall or fence. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, again for the record. So Division 1.12 of the design standards outlines specific standards for outdoor storage uses. Subsection 1 in part prohibits materials and/or equipment from being stored at heights exceeding the minimum 6-foot height of the required wall or fence. In practice, staff has taken the position that the intent of the code is met if there is a minimum 6-foot tall site obscuring fence and any required landscape screening for the site, even if a single level of equipment exceeds the height of a fence. For example, the storage of dirt moving equipment. The height of a backhoe can vary generally from 6 to 20 feet in height, and a standard operating height for your typical backhoe loader is approximately 10 feet. So that would easily exceed the minimum required 6-foot fence. So in this case, if the backhoe was stored behind a 6-foot site obscuring fence, staff would take the position that the intent of the code is met. The applicant currently operates an equipment storage yard, storing equipment such as empty metal storage containers, porta potties, and construction office trailers. Under their current operations, they have been stacking metal storage containers 3 high. Staff became aware of this during the review of their business license and informed the applicant that they must demonstrate compliance with Division 1.12. After discussions with staff, the applicant submitted this request to amend Division 1.12 to eliminate the requirement that materials and/or equipment be stored at a height not to exceed the height of the required wall or fence. The applicant's proposed language is shown here on this slide at the top, and it reads, storage areas shall be enclosed by a 100% site obscuring fence or wall permanently installed and maintained by a minimum height of 6 feet, striking that no materials or equipment shall be stored at heights exceeding that of the wall or fence. So in staff's evaluation, I felt that there was the potential for outdoor storage to occur on properties that may be adjacent to residential uses or in areas that are more visible to the traveling public. And therefore, I'm recommending a slightly modified version of what the applicant has proposed. And it reads, storage areas shall be enclosed by a 100% site obscuring fence or wall permanently installed and maintained by a minimum height of 6 feet. Except as provided in this subsection, no materials and/or equipment shall be stored to a height exceeding that of the wall or fence. Materials and/or equipment may be stored to a height exceeding that of the wall or fence on a parcel in a general industrial zoning district unless the parcel is adjacent to a residential use. So this slide shows the applicant's site, and I think it demonstrates my concerns with sites that may not be as removed as this site is and could potentially be adjacent to residential zoning districts. So the request as written by the applicant could affect properties in the RC, GC, LI, and GI zoning districts. I did do a quick little survey of our zoning map, and there are a handful of GI zone parcels adjacent to residential uses, but it is a bigger concern for those less intensive zoning districts, which are more commonly adjacent to residential uses. So that's why I proposed the language to really be specific to general industrial zonings, not adjacent to residential uses. There are 3 findings of fact the Planning Commission must make in the affirmative in order to recommend approval of the zoning code amendment to the Board of Supervisors. Staff has made all three findings in the affirmative with the language proposed by staff. We've not received any public comments related to this request, and I'm available for questions, and I believe the applicant's also here.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joel Locke from Alice McKenzie Law Firm. On behalf of Rapid Space LLC, together with me is Robert Heaton, who is a managing member of the LLC. And we've been working with staff on this modification of language, as well as the district attorney's office. And honestly, we just didn't have enough time to digest Ms. Paris's recommendation prior to the due date of putting together the report. But after having an opportunity to do so, we have absolutely no objection to the proposed modification of the language. And we would wholly support the language as presented by staff.
I'd like to go ahead and throw this over to commissioners. Commissioner Kilgore?
No, it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Borders.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate you on your ability to get something out of the DA's office. 4 years ago, 4 years ago, the Director of Planning, Mr. Lee Plummel, started a revision of Title 18. The commissioners worked diligently for about 6 to 8 months and rewrote this whole article. Since that time, we have spent 3.5 man-years of an attorney in the district attorney's office trying to wordsmith and codify the document that we passed 4 years ago.
With the help of the staff, that is.
With the help of the staff, yes. And you've come in here with an amendment to a document that we amended 4 years ago and have been trying to get adopted for 4 years. And now we're going to amend it just before 2 weeks from now. We're going to receive supposedly the new version of Title 18 for us to approve and move forward with. So, Mr. Locke, I'm not beating up on you. I'm beating up on them.
Understood.
But it's extremely frustrating. I don't know that this provision is not in the ordinance that we've been trying to pass. Now, staff told me the other day it wasn't. But maybe we ought to consider it and put it into the new document that we're going to adopt supposedly in 2 weeks to send to the Board of Supervisors that we haven't seen in 4 years, and we don't know if your amendment is in it or not. So I'm extremely frustrated with the whole process of us trying to get Title 18 revised. And unfortunately for me, I can't find a way through this process to give you what you're looking for until we get a document we can look at that we thought we revised 4 years ago. And I'm sorry. And Todd, I know you aren't part of it, and you take the brunt of my beatings here. But you know, if it takes 3.5 years, the legislature gets over 1,000 pieces of legislature codified in 120 to 150 days, and we can't get one document codified in 3.5 years. There's something wrong with it. And it's extremely frustrating for us. Now we're in the middle of revising the master plan. We're going to approve a new master plan within probably 6 months, which will require another revision of Title 18 because Title 18 will probably no longer coincide with the master plan. And so if we take past history as an indication, it's going to be another 3 years before we have another Title 18. You know, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. And I apologize to you guys because I'm taking it out on you, but you're asking us to amend a document that we thought we've already amended, that we haven't approved, that we're going to change and reapprove again. And it just seems like an incredible waste of time. And I apologize. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Kilgore?
So what he said, but also this is, there's no public concern raised about this and it's not adjacent to anything residential, so in which case I fully support it and would like to see it in the final document as well.
All right. And Commissioner Lloyd, how about Christopher, sorry.
I don't even know what to say to that. No.
Sorry.
Commissioner DeChristopher, for the record, no.
Thank you.
I appreciate Commissioner Border's frustration. My wrath might be at a different degree, but I understand where he's coming from. I am going to ask the DA. We have a commitment now, correct, for sitting and reviewing Title 18? And, hello?
There we go. I understand that a meeting's been scheduled. Unfortunately, I am not personally involved in that particular process.
Apologies. Dan will be?
Yeah, Dan has been spearheading that effort. However, I believe that there are meetings being scheduled in September to start
September 3rd, yeah.
reviewing and going over Title 18.
Apologies. I know we keep giving you the bloody nose over this. You're the
Well,
messenger.
It's my understanding that the September 3rd meeting is for us to pass on it, not to review it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to take a document that we haven't seen in 3.5 years, and in one reading, we're going to say all of Title 18 is way okay and we love it, and thank you very much. And I don't think that's going to happen either. Just so you know.
And I would concur with that.
And your comments.
And Commissioner Cron, you want to come in here on this?
No, I'm excited to at least can have a little movement forward here. You know, sometimes it's just baby steps. And so I think we're taking one tonight by potentially approving this. And so I tend to fall into the same frustration level that Commissioner Border is as well. So I guess with that said, I don't want to really say much more. I think it's time to move forward.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks. Okay.
I assume everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
I share the concern. I share everyone else's concerns over Title 18. I have not been on the commission long enough to experience the fullness of the delay, but maybe that's why not all my hair is gray yet. It does seem like a rather short amount of time, and as near as I can tell, it's not something we can directly address in this process. So maybe in this, what's before us in this moment. So, maybe there's a separate action the commission can take during the review of Title 18, but I don't think it holds this up.
Okay, and I'm going to beg to differ. Is that my concern is that this Title 18 that we started working on, this document, and I hate to do this to you, Robert, but this document that we're working on is yay big. And that document, the Title 18 actually had referred to hippodromes. And I don't know if you know what a hippodrome is back in the 30s during the Depression, people used to dance for money. And that was one of the things that was in our Title 18 hippodrome. And this was back in the 30s, and this had not been revisited. This commission, and when I first joined it, we were given the direction by Mr. Plemmel that we were supposed to go ahead and work on it. And we spent a lot of time. I did not spend as much time as some of my other board members because I looked at it and said, this is so archaic. And one of the things that's happened in the interim is that we have had our master plan, which we have a contractor that has feet to the fire and has required what do you call they have performance indicators essentially during a timeline that says that something should be done. And what's happening on that is we have progressed on a document that we just started, gosh, a little over a year ago, and it looks like we're going to be getting complete. It is very upsetting for me as being a member of this planning commission that to take dribbles and drabs and amendment that is here when our district attorneys was delegated to not rewrite what we had done, but refer it to the other ones to make sure there were no redundancies and there were no conflicts. We were promised this in January? Was the last time was January?
It was July, and then it was
last
January.
year. And then it was July of this year. We have yet to see it. And rather than doing little Band-Aids or fingers in the dike, my feeling is I do not feel comfortable on doing any changes on Title 18 until we see the entire document. Commissioner Lloyd.
I feel like you might have skipped Commissioner Borders.
No,
but I'll go.
you're out, right?
I have a question for Heather real quick. You mentioned that this was found in looking at a routine business license check. Does the absence of our passage of this impact their business license and their ability to operate their business in any way in Carson City?
So without passing this, they would have to reduce the height of their containers to a single level. And I would have to defer to them as to how that impacts their business.
Do they currently have a?
They currently have a business license,
Okay.
yes. We are working with them to try to get this approved so that they can continue to operate as they currently are.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
I have a follow-up comment on that. They also paid $3,250 for this application, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so by principle, I have a problem with us not going through because we dislike the fact that the DA's office has not provided us Title 18 and them going through the process that the city has provided them to get what they need in order to be able to run their business. So I just wanted to state those items on the record, as those are things that I saw in reviewing this item. I think that I agree with Heather's wording, and as long as the applicant is in agreement with that, I am supportive of that wording moving forward. And I personally am ready to make a motion in that direction if there is.
There's still more discussion.
I'm just
Okay.
stating that on the record.
Okay, Commissioner Borders?
Heather, if they've submitted an application and that requested a zoning change for us to send forward to the Board of Supervisors. While that's in process, they're still allowed to proceed with their business.
That's correct. They should be at a single level of containers right now. Yes. Based on the way the code is currently written and implemented,
But
they should not
they're
have stacked
asking for a
containers.
change, and
Right.
we're not gonna go out there and tell them to put them all down and then next week pass the change and put them all back up again.
Right.
Okay, so during the process of us doing this administration,
Yes.
be it the planning commission or the board of supervisors or whatever else, as long as this thing is in limbo, they're okay to operate the way they are. With them stacked 3 deep.
Are you taking action tonight?
No, that's what we're wondering.
That's what I'm asking. I'm saying if we say, for whatever reason, there's 3 commas and a period out of place, just like Title 18 is for the last 3 years. Can they continue on doing what they're doing while we sort out our administrative problems?
I would say that unless we receive a complaint, then we can probably let them continue. But as Commissioner Lloyd stated, they have paid a fee and come through the process that is available to anybody in the public to avail themselves of.
Okay, but then let's bring it back again too, is that we're back into forgiveness. Because essentially they were already doing this 3 high when we had this in statute that they couldn't. So they've asked for a change in the Title 18 in order to go ahead and comply. Correct?
That is how it made its way to you, yes.
Okay, so that's how it made its way through. So the question is, and again, I'm going to defer to you, Todd, is can we recess this particular item until we actually are able to address it in Title 18 when we receive it? Is that a possibility?
So I'm going to ask you to divorce the ongoing Title 18 revisions from what we currently have. Currently, we have a Title 18. It's in code. Yes, we are reviewing it, revising it, and changing it, and that process is ongoing. However, we still have to comply with our existing code. Under the existing code, there's a process for zoning code amendments in CCMC 1802075. Under that process, we are to receive, when we receive an application, we're required to hold a hearing within a certain amount of days. There's findings for this commission to consider and to make, and then there's a decision and a report to the board that the commission needs to make. If this commission holds a hearing, which is we're having it right now, and then doesn't make a report to the board within 30 days of the date of its hearing, the commission is deemed to have recommended approval of the zoning code change. So to directly answer your question, can we wait now for the new Title 18 to come before the board and go through that process? No, we can't. That said, while the DA's office is I'm going to say codifying Title 18 for you to review and pass upon, I have been keeping track of all amendments to Title 18 that have gone through and been approved by the Board of Supervisors. There's been one so far. This is the second one. So when the amended Title 18 comes through, I will look at it for the changes that you've already approved to make sure that these are incorporated. Does that answer your question?
Well, since we're looking at September 3rd, we know we're past the 30 days. Okay, Commissioner Christopher.
Whenever we look at doing an amendment, one of the first questions that comes to mind for me is how large of a population are we looking at in terms of businesses that this may impact, that are currently stacking as this applicant is at the present time?
To my knowledge, this is the only one. However, this would resolve the issue of staff having to interpret what is, above the fence, and so it somewhat resolves that for a portion of the zoning codes that would be affected.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Heather, on your proposed amendment, there is no height restriction.
That's correct.
So you theoretically, these things stack to 6, I think.
Yeah, there's no height restriction. As it's currently drafted, if you have a different.
Well, what I'm saying is that we've been told that 3's enough. If we leave it completely open, maybe 6 was really enough. Or 7. I just hate leaving things open-ended like that.
So I would suggest looking at a height, not a specified height of, I don't know, 24 feet or 25 feet, as opposed to, equivalent to
Well,
stacking 3 storage
Yeah,
containers.
20 feet would take 3 storage containers. They're 8 feet, are they 8 feet tall?
They're either 8.5 or 9.5 feet tall.
So,
So 30 feet would cover any 3 stack of a high cube container.
okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
When this first came in, Heather and I had a conversation with the attorneys, the applicant's attorney. And in that discussion, we sort of bantered some stuff about. And one of the things I remember we talked about was, what if somebody's storing a crane? Crane is not always in use. Sometimes it's stored, sometimes in an outdoor storage facility. What is that height? It's going to exceed 6 feet. And so we don't, right now, I think, Commissioner Borders, you're looking at the application, the physical application of the code based on a sample size of 1. But the code's written more broadly to address the concept of outdoor storage as opposed to storage in a building. And I think that's why there was silence on the height limitation, because we're not really sure what that thing is that will be stored outdoors. So just offering that.
Well, could the clarification actually be, with a crane is more equipment, this right here is storage?
That's interesting, because Heather and I had a conversation. And what was it, Heather? You had equipment and something else.
The code says materials or equipment.
And I said, what's a material and what's equipment? Like, is a Connex box equipment because it stores something in it, or is it the material? Because I think a Connex box is kind of equipment, and it's just, to me, those are very, I don't know what those terms mean. I don't want to amend the code using those terms.
Material would be a pile of dirt.
Well, yeah, material's a pile of dirt, and equipment typically is mobile without putting wheels underneath it. And with a Connex box, you'd have to have it mobile.
If I may, for the board, just a point of clarity. So QuickSpace provides storage containers and containerized offices for construction projects, large general contractors, everything from a gigafactory to a small build. Those containers are moved mobily when they're moving from a storage site, which is our outdoor storage, to the actual construction site. With that said, a storage container gets brought up into the code a lot. It's often in the context of you're storing something in it. So if a business has a container on the side of their business and they're putting contents into that storage container, then that's usually what the context of the code is written to. In our case, our storage containers are our equipment, and they're stored empty on our lot. So we do not store contents within those containers when we stack them up. So we are the provider of containers as opposed to providing storage that those containers are used for. That's done on the business premise where, as this meeting started out with, someone was coming to you guys and getting approval to have that on their property.
Well, I think the thing I'm looking at is the photo that you have. If you bring back the photos look like the typical storage things that I see, out in Hong Kong or Yantian or wherever. I mean, that's what they look like to me, that they're up there. They're not, specific where, like, you have your cute gray spaces that have QuickSpace on the side. These are Connex boxes, storage containers, and basically shipping containers.
All the containers that we have, including the gray boxes, as you mentioned, are pretty much the same thing. These particular ones that are shown on the perimeter of the property have not been painted and decaled yet. That's the only difference between them. But they would be considered a one-trip a grade A premium container. So if you were to see them in person, you'd be pretty impressed.
Okay, Commissioner Lloyd?
I think I was just gonna say, I think what Hope said, and just like right now in this situation, we're talking about storage containers, but Heather specified, and I think Hope specified, like, this is storage of all kinds of equipment and not just storage containers, because this is for zoning. And so I was just trying to, or was going to try to bring it back for us about thinking about this as this is one situation where it happens to be a storage container. But I think Heather mentioned, like, it could be a backhoe where the arm of the not the hoe part of the backhoe, but it is sticking up out off, and you can see it over the fence. And I guess that's my comment.
Okay, Commissioner Kilgore?
I'd just like to get back to maybe making an amendment and hopes to get this through today for these gentlemen, and making it, a max height issue as an opposed to whether it's an equipment or storage. And I'm totally satisfied and would like to just kind of make I would just like to recommend that we maybe use the 30-foot max height. That way we're not leaving it wide open, as was said.
Okay. Commissioner Brooks or Commissioner Cron, do you have anything? Okay. All right, Commissioner Lloyd?
Heather, I do have another question for you. If we do limit the height, as Hope was saying, like if somebody was storing a crane, do we have any of those outlying situations in our city now that we are aware of? Where
Two.
I'm sorry, Terry, what's that?
No, I said I know two, easy. There's the equipment yard out on Highway 50 over off of Deer Run, and then there's the other one that's the American Rentals off of South Carson Street.
When we all got back.
Yeah, they're sticking up near all.
Yeah.
Talk about all outside storage.
So there's
And then if it's
some,
modified,
Heather
just
Manzo had a good idea that if we want to look at potentially limiting height, maybe we limit height of stacked equipment as opposed to just equipment such as cranes or backhoes.
That would work.
All right.
Now, we do have to bring in public comment too. Hope, can I open it up to public comment? Excuse me, Hope, can I open it up to public comment, please? Okay, yes, I'd like to open up to public comment. Denny, go ahead and take the chair. Oh, okay, you all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got up too fast. Denny French, Carson City. It looks like they do a great job of stacking them. That's awesome. They actually make their own wall. One of the solutions to it would to take away their want to change anything, but just get a special permit to put sheathing over it that made it look like a building and get it for a building. I'm just trying to think outside the box here because it is a wall in itself and it's protecting from us seeing maybe their buildings, which is sort of funny. But if it were a building, it would be acceptable. And it's just, to me, it's hard because making this amendment, like you said, is bucking up against something that's still floating in the wind and don't know what you're dealing with. And that's a big frustration for myself when I read these. But, so that's my 2 minutes worth. But They're doing a great job. They're a business that's doing well. I don't want to discourage them. The fact that they're close to vicinity of buildings that are otherwise used for maybe occupancy or such. We've got storage things, and we have places where they have to put them, and if they had to fence them all to not allow us to see those things that they have in their yard, we'd have a heck of a mess. Are they required to have a fence at all? Are they required to cover things that they have in their areas? Is it responsible for them to say, hey, it's covering itself, it looks like a wall as it's there? Do we need the fence at all? And the fence that they put there depends if you're standing at the fence, you're not going to see over it. If you're 10 feet away, you might still not be able to see over it, depending on where they back set their items. You're only going to see it when you do a drone over or if you climb that fence, in some cases. But my thing is that it's dependent on how close they put their items to an area that's a line of endeavor from their property to the open area. And if they put them back 10 more feet, they wouldn't be visible from most areas where you're standing next to that fence or even driving on the street next to it. So it's sort of a funny thing for us to have to argue over when everything seems perfectly good, and they shouldn't have had to pay $7,000 to come in and find out they do an excellent job of stacking. They've got a great business going, and they're performing their part of things, and we're just bibbling over how high to make the fence. And that's a shame, because you've got to wait. And I appreciate the effort, and when I read over this, and I'm not smart on any of this by any means, but my gut thing is that you're doing the best you can under tie your hands behind your back situations. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Grundy. I'm a resident of Carson City.
Can you get closer? I can hear.
And
Can you state your name again, please?
Tom Grundy. I'm a resident of Carson City, and I have some concerns regarding this item, even with the more specific language proposed by staff. I think it's important to recognize that this ordinance applies to more than one parcel. This applies to, I don't know how many parcels, more than just 6100 Morgan Mill Road. And I have to apologize. I based this on the staff reports, so there's some changes. My read of the proposed changes is that they'll allow stacking of materials and equipment to essentially unlimited heights, where the current language limits height to as high as one is willing to build a screening fence or wall. So to a degree, that's self-limiting. I'm concerned that eliminating restrictions on heights to which equipment and materials may be stacked may present hazards to that site as well as neighboring sites, and possibly even to the public. In the specific case of 6100 Morgan Mill Road, the applicant wants to stack items approximately 3 times as tall as they are wide. I understand that they're employing mitigation measures against prevailing winds and stuff, but other factors such as wind from other directions and earthquakes exist, and those are far more difficult to predict, along with what may take place on all the other parcels that this applies to. And I recognize there's a 30-foot maximum that's being discussed based on one parcel. Maybe for stacking something else, 25 feet is the maximum. Maybe some places 50 feet is appropriate. So I don't know that applying a number based on one parcel to however many industrial parcels, I don't know how well that really fits. So in general, the collapse of a stack of materials or equipment could cause harm to people or property on that site or neighboring sites, and even to the public. In keeping with the screening of the wall and fence requirement, at a minimum helps protect neighboring parcels. I don't think language proposed by the applicant or staff meets the finding 1, substantial compliance with and supports the goals and policies of the master plan. I looked at the master plan on the city website, specifically to master plan policy IND 1.3 screening. It says storage, loading, and work operations should be screened from view along all industrial area boundaries when adjacent to non-industrial uses and along all public streets, not just residential uses that's set up there. All non-industrial uses and along public streets. And we saw the pictures. The screening along the public streets is non-existent there. And to pass this That's what people are going to see. Granted, this particular site is a dead-end street today, but if I'm not mistaken, a subdivision is being developed on the parcels to the east zoned MFA and SF6, which will use Morgan Mill Road for access. And it's general commercial immediately adjacent to this parcel. So I don't think if the way I read IND 1.3, I don't think the finding can be met, and I don't think it'll help the applicant because they have two frontages they couldn't stack material along.
Thank you. Okay, any further public comment? Okay. Right, bring it back to you, Heather.
I had a suggestion after talking with Hope. So subsection 5 of 1.12 also has a sentence that we would recommend deleting. It says storage containers themselves shall be screened from view from a public right-of-way by a 100% site obscuring fence or wall 6 feet in height minimum. And I think if we were to move forward with the amendment, we would also need to strike that, or at the very least amend it. So between that and the possibility of adding a height for stacked equipment, I would suggest if the applicant is willing to, that we would continue the item, and then we would re-advertise with the amended language and come back.
Would you be agreeable to that?
As long as it would not impact ongoing operations as are currently being done, we would not object to revisiting this at a future meeting with implementing some of the changes that we've discussed tonight.
Okay. What do you guys feel like?
Well, I'd,
Like to continue it?
yep.
Okay. All right, we'd like to go ahead and continue that. Do we have to make a motion to continue?
Just a little more direction. We heard public comment and it was interesting. Because what the public comment basically said is not all sites are the same. And right now, you all, or our existing code has what I think is a really good provision. And I'm not advocating, I want to force a discussion, and you can take it wherever you want. But the current code says if you're going to exceed the height, you need a special use permit. You all did that with the apartments on Little Lane, with Bates Homes, things like that. And so I'm just thinking out loud, given that all sites aren't equal, as we just heard in public comment, and I agree, all sites aren't equal. Do you establish a maximum height and say, but if it's more than that height, it's a special use permit? That way, you're recognizing the differences in locational criteria. And I just would like you to discuss that, because I think it's worthy of a discussion.
Commissioner Kilgore?
Yeah, it's completely agreed. It's really simple for me because the only reason why I have no problem approving this is because it's not adjacent to anything that's residential. So in which case, yes, it's absolutely a case-to-case basis, and every location is absolutely different. And I wouldn't approve this in many locations, but in this certain location specifically being where it's at, it makes sense, and I totally have no problem shelving it and getting the language worked out, or however we need to appropriate the special use permit, be it. I'm totally in agreement.
Okay, Commissioner DeChristopher?
I think I need clarification, but first a comment. I like where Hope was going with that because it does allow us, pardon? I know you weren't advocating, what shall we call it, throwing out a great idea. Because it does allow us to look at each one on its own basis. And not that I want to hold you gentlemen up, but that's where my next question comes. We do need to have a discussion about what we amend if we expect to address them. Are we going to do that tonight, or are you proposing, Madam Chair, that this is shelved until we have that discussion for amendment and revisit this. I need that for my clarification.
Okay. Commissioner Borders?
I hate to beat a dead horse, but a lot of the discussion we're having tonight is exactly what we did 4 years ago on a lot of other items. And we were in the mode of trying to figure out whether it was this lot or that lot or where it is. I don't like to do it on the fly. If the applicant is willing to continue, to allow us to continue this, I don't have a problem with them stacking the way they are right now until we can figure this out. I don't know how that works, but that's not, to me, that's not the issue. The issue is, we spent a lot of time redoing this. There's some really good stuff in it. We haven't seen it. This is worthy of, we had a couple of good suggestions tonight, but I think, I really hate trying to do this on the fly, but I also don't want to penalize Quick Space for, trying to do the right thing. And you're trying to do the right thing, and I appreciate that. So, if we can continue this until sometime immemorial, when we ever get something to look at, and we can certainly make, like Mr. Reese has said, make sure that this becomes part of that discussion when we finally get to it. I think we'll eventually get there. I just don't want them to be necessarily penalized while we get there, to get along the way. And if we can continue it and they can continue, I would support that 100%.
Commissioner Cron?
I kind of fall into the same line of thinking that Commissioner Borders has, is that let's not penalize these people for trying to do the right thing. And if we can if they're open to continuing it, let's do that. Let's give staff the opportunity to kind of come back with some new language and just take if you will, take a mulligan here and let's see if we can get this done right.
Okay. Commissioner Brooks? Okay. I think the general consensus is basically, if we could revisit this, because here it is right now. I mean, it's even hard where we're discussing it, saying, Title 18 now says this, and we can't see Section 5. So that's a quandary for us. I think the other thing is, though, too, is I think the public comment was important. If you had an interesting fax back when faxes were brand new, it said big boat, big damage, and I didn't know what it meant. 84 containers went into the sea and it's crushed my boat. So I look at this and I think, okay, how high are they stacked? And Mr. Grundy brought up some interesting things on how high they're stacked and what we have for wind, because a lot of places that they're stacked rather high, we don't have the wind. We don't have some of the other different things, and they're usually set on a hard tarmac that actually has the weight. They can bear this kind of weight in their level. So I mean, I have some real questions about it, and I'd like to have some more information in addition to looking at Title 18, because I'm wondering if this is more of a thing that is a one-off. Like, are we going to go ahead and do Marlet and make it, and do a special use permit for it to be higher? Or if your containers that you have are all 8 feet high, and that structurally it's fine for it to be 24 feet high rather than 30, and trying to go for that fourth. So, I mean, that's what I'm concerned about. So, would you be willing to go ahead and table it?
Yes, we'll table it.
Okay, and understanding it might take a little bit more, and
We will work with staff and the district attorney's office to move this forward at an appropriate speed and address all of the issues that were raised tonight.
okay, and then I do have a question is, is, and I realize this is not the planning commission's purview, but is it more like the building department as far as structural as to how high they should be and should they be safe?
Off the top of my head, I'm actually, and this is just off the top of my head without giving it much thought, but just listening to the whole conversation, I'm almost feeling like the height limit should be dictated by the zoning district, and if you exceed that height limit, then it's the SUP. It's not a building code issue because the building official is not going to take jurisdiction on it. But, and I honestly don't even know how that syncs up with what they're doing there, but that's just off the top of my head, seems like a rational approach.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lloyd?
I just wanted to ask for some clarity because I'm still unclear if this is getting continued to say a date certain to the next meeting, or if this is getting continued to a date very uncertain whenever Title 18 is certain.
This is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. I would prefer that it not be continued to a date certain. I would prefer that it be continued subject to the DA's office and the applicant working together to come up with language that suits them and suits the city as well. And then based upon the timing of the Title 18 revisions, that'll either become a part of the Title 18 revisions or that'll be brought back separately at a sooner time so that we can move the applicant forward as appropriate.
Oh, neither. Perfect. That is good clarification, though. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, who wants to, so we'd like, and you, everybody agrees. Rob, you agree, everything's good. Okay, and who would like to entertain the motion? Do you like to take it on, since you're clear?
Madam Chair, I'll move that we table
We can
or that we continue ZA 2024-0225 to a date uncertain.
Okay, looking for a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, all approve?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Seeing no nays, passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. See you next
Thank you
time.
for your time.
Thank you, guys.
See you, Joel. It's nothing personal, you know that.
Okay, now going forward. 6F. LU 2024-0242 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding an application for a special use permit SUP to establish a temporary cellular on wheels, COW, to offset the gap in wireless service coverage between the decommission of an existing site and the establishment of a permanent facility on a site Zone General Commercial GC located at 1281 North Root Street, Assessor's Parcel Number APN 002123-10.
Good evening. For the record, Heather Manzo. So this request is before you this evening to establish a temporary wireless facility. The applicant is facing a decommissionment of their current tower that is located on Plaza Street. And so they have been working with staff for a few months on potential locations, and we asked for them to provide us some specific information in terms of whether or not they can co-locate at an existing facility and whatnot. So this is only the request for the temporary facility. The applicant is aware that they are going to have to pursue a special use permit for the permanent facility once they have done whatever studies are necessary to pursue that application with the city. So with this request, the temporary facility would be contained within a 36 by 36 foot footprint on a site off of Corbett. The property is zoned general commercial and for the most part is surrounded by commercial uses. I did want to note that there is a commercially zoned, a general commercial zoned property that is operating as apartments on the southwest corner of this parcel. So we did receive a public comment from the operator of the apartments that was included in the staff report packet, noting some concerns regarding emissions. So as the staff report discusses, that's not something that's under the city's purview. The federal government has imposed limitations on local government in terms of considerations for cellular facilities. That's noted in the staff report. However, I did share that comment with the applicant and they did prepare a report that was included as part of the late material. So if you have any questions about that aspect of their operation, then we'll defer to the applicant to answer those questions. So what's before you this evening is the temporary facility. It's 64 feet tall, contained on a trailer that would be removed once a permanent site is placed at its permanent location. So with this, we don't have a provision in code that allows for a temporary telecommunication facility. Our temporary code is very limited to a timeline of, I believe it's 120 days, I think, is what it states in code, and it doesn't really contemplate telecommunication facilities. So oftentimes we see those as part of a special event or something that's, not really something that comes up very often. So in this case, they're facing a deadline of, I think, August is when the other facility is about ready to come offline. And the applicant did provide some information that's in the application, and I've got some slides here showing a coverage map where it's showing that there is existing coverage today and the coverage will be going away unless there's kind of a stopgap measure taking place with this temporary facility. So with that, here's kind of what it would look like. They would fully fence it like code requires. All of their equipment and the tower would be contained within the footprint of that leased area. The photo simulations do show how those would look from different street frontages. In a lot of cases, it's very similar to a permanent facility. The one thing the applicant noted they really can't achieve with this request is the requirement in our code to allow for co-located facilities. The reason being is this is a temporary facility. It's not actually going to have any footings into the ground. It's on that trailer, and it's not really designed to take on additional antenna. So with that, staff did acknowledge that we don't have a temporary ordinance that allows for that use temporarily. We have recommended approval, noting this is a temporary use that we don't really have a provision for, and we're trying to make sure that the applicant has the ability to come before the Planning Commission to make their request. So with that, this is the existing coverage map, and I just want to look at colors because all of the science behind it is something the applicant can focus on. But when we look at, say, the green and yellow, this is the existing coverage map with that Central Carson location on Plaza Street. And once that site is decommissioned, the colors change significantly. So what the applicant has presented to us is that they are going to have a negative effect on their customers if they don't have a temporary facility in place to provide for Verizon customers and emergency services that use that wireless service. There's going to be an issue providing that service within this area. So with that, we did receive, in addition to the report that the applicant provided in late material, we did receive a public comment from one of our residents who noted concerns with code conformance, and I've explained kind of where staff was at when we were looking at this application. And then there was also a note as to why other locations weren't considered. So there was a co-location map that was provided in the application. I didn't put it in my slides, but it had a yellow radius around some areas and contemplated several different sites. So what the applicant did is they have to provide justification for whether or not a facility should be approved. And so they've got to show that there's a coverage issue, which they have. The other thing they have to show is that there's not an existing facility that they can co-locate to today, and there's not, another option for them. So at this stage in the game, they really don't have any other options that are viable as provided in their application materials. There was a site noted in the public comment that maybe the applicants can speak to where that would be located and if that would even be a viable option. I do know just from looking at Street View, the facility that was identified over on at Lone Mountain, the property there, it's a short facility. It's not a really tall tower with a lot of space in it. So that might be one reason that a co-located facility wasn't a possibility. Another thing is it's outside of the radius that the applicant was looking at. So with that, staff was able to make all of the necessary findings for the special use permit, noting that there's a condition that would limit the use of this temporary facility to a period of 2 years. That's what the applicant requested. They had provided a timeline that kind of explained their process in terms of obtaining approvals from the studies they need to go through and what they thought it would take to identify a location, get the studies done, and get the special use permit through the process and get it constructed. So staff was amenable to the timeline they requested, and that concludes my presentation. The applicant has a team here available to answer questions, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Please come forward. Have to make it green. There we go. Okay.
Good evening. My name's Yvonne Pinto. I'm with Verizon Wireless. I'm municipal engagement partner for Verizon. With me, I have David Witowski. He can speak to any EME concerns or questions you might have. Also is our vendor, Dina Menace, who submitted the application, is very familiar with the application packet, and I am as well. So we're here to answer any questions you might have about why the existing site's going away, why we need a temporary site, anything of that nature.
Commissioner Borders?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Kilgore, I'm
Not
sorry.
Clark, but yes.
This is more so for, a lot of people had their hands full on this one, I can see. It's a really interesting situation. I was actually discussing with Commissioner Borders before we adjourned about the legality of the passing of this, because we've come across some of these in the past, and it's not in our purview to approve or disapprove of some of these projects. And for me, that really leaves it up to, what staff has said about it. It's already gone through some serious, some serious levels here that, don't really seem to be, don't seem to lead me to a place where I can disapprove of a project like this, though I look at it and I say, this is ugly. This isn't what I want to see when I look driving down the street, but it's absolutely necessary. And in which case for me is, it's an obvious yes on the pass. But I also want to speak and apologize to my fellow commissioners and staff as well. And of course, you taking your time to come out. But I will have to excuse myself from the rest of the meeting. I have some very important previous engagements. I'm teaching a class, and I really got to get to that before it's too late. I didn't suspect the last one was going to take so long, but I wish I could be here to vote on this. But I do have faith that my fellow commissioners will see it the same way, and you'll be well on your way soon. But I appreciate your time, and got to go.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. I am curious why the current site is being decommissioned, if you could let us.
I'm sure you're probably aware that the current site is at the Carson City Federal Building at 705 Plaza. Our lease was naturally expiring, and the federal government, GSA, had notified us that they would not be renewing, that they had plans for the parcel. And they've been tremendous in granting us even a short extension to get us to this hearing. So, because originally I think it was supposed to expire in May. So they've been working with us, but we've kind of, used up our good graces for that. And so finding a location that meets as best as we can within the code that exists, away from residential, has been the challenge. This site specifically, the existing site and the temp site that it will fill the gap for, it currently serves the Capitol building, serves this building, serves Carson Middle School, Carson High School, also the planning offices. So the coverage will, normally what happens is, you might have more than one carrier in an area, but the 911 system is a redundant system so that if any carrier goes offline, another carrier can pick up that 911 system. So here, by not replacing it, we will have that 911 system reduced further without the redundancy. I also do note that we had some inquiries from the Capitol building over several years. Several legislators had been escalating, wanting even more coverage from our existing site. So to have this temp, and right now our temporary site is planned for, our permanent site is planned for the same parcel. So we fully expect to come back in here with all screening that's necessary for a permanent site, every step of the way. Our process, the only reason our permanent site will take roughly about 2 years, it usually takes about 6 months minimum for the environmental, the ground disturbance assessments, things like that. So we can't even get to a point where we can submit to you until we've checked off all of those boxes for the permanent site. A temporary site is on a trailer, and it allows us to have no ground disturbance, provide the coverage that's needed for all these buildings and services in the area while we're working on that permanent location. It's never our intent to leave this in place because we have to take it to other locations as it goes.
I have one more question.
Yes.
In some of the public comment, it was in the late material that we received, there was a comment asking why there may not have been consideration to co-locate the antenna on property, I think it's on the Lone Mountain site.
And that's to the north, I believe, from the existing site.
Yes.
As Heather mentioned, the radius is very specific. We actually already have a site to the south and a site to the north. So we have, that radius is very tight that we have to stay within to cover the gap. Otherwise, the site to the south will end up trying to and the site to the north will try to compensate for the loss of the existing site, but will be unable to. And the Capitol building will, and the planning offices, et cetera, will be highly affected by the loss of service.
Commissioner DeChristopher. Okay, and I have a question for you too. I worked on a lot of the state buildings, and for a long time, they only use primarily fiber optic for their facilities. So are you talking about users that are in there, clients, customers, this and that?
It's clients, it's customers.
Okay, it's clients, not the customers. It's not the specific state of Nevada. Is that?
Oh, some of the customers may be the state of Nevada, because the federal building is.
I think the reason I'm just kind of confused on this is because I know I fought hard. They wanted hardwire, and we were stuck with AT&T, and to even bring Spectrum in was difficult.
Yeah.
So, and they did not specifically look for cellular. So, I mean, I just want the clarification. This is for a customer base, but not for institutional specific.
Not specific.
Thank you.
And I did want to, the conditions of approval, I've noticed you've asked the applicants whether they accept them. I was hoping to get clarification on one of the conditions, which was item 9.
Okay.
Am I permitted to ask that question?
Yes, you
now?
certainly
Okay.
are. Sure.
Currently, as I mentioned, a cell on wheels is on a trailer. We don't have permanent ground equipment, but it mentions painting the ground equipment and enclosing it in a fence. The fence itself will actually totally surround the trailer. You won't see the trailer. The trailer is, we sent in a picture of the cow that's proposed for the, and it's neutral gray, not reflective surfaces. So, we were hoping to avoid painting the cow, and just have the fence serve as the screening, since it will fully enclose the cow equipment that's on the trailer. And I do have a picture that I can share, but it's on my phone, of the cow proposed.
I think that at this point, we just have more questions
Okay.
about the project itself.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Cron?
Right now, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks? Okay. So, okay, Commissioner Borders?
I can understand why you don't want to paint the cow. But the antenna itself is above the screening. And am I wrong and I thought that we had approved back a long time ago, probably when we were working on Title 18, a cell tower on the west side behind the Capitol building. It's now looks like a water tower. And I'm not,
One behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's behind Sierra Leone.
yeah, that's it. And that's really quite unobtrusive. But I just, this thing is ugly. I'm sorry, it's
No.
ugly.
I fully understand.
And we're trying to get away from ugly. And I don't know who, if you've known for all these years that you were going to lose your facility at the federal building, it just seems like
We didn't
somebody
know for
dropped the
years.
ball somewhere.
No, we didn't know for years. They actually, when a lease comes, to give you an idea of our process, when a lease comes to an expiration point, usually you start working with the landlord about 2 years out. And we did. But we didn't receive the non-renewal notice until about 6 months ago. That's when everything went into full gear, because you can know about an expiration date, and you think everyone's at the table, but to discuss the amendment or the renewal. But if all of a sudden you get a notice 6 months before your expiration that we're not going to renew, that's when the clock starts ticking for us to find a location. And we did look at several locations that were around the existing federal building. And none of them met with, there was either a designated residential right across the street from some of those, we even looked at the casino parking lot and couldn't get response. So this is literally the only site that came within the search ring to serve this area that would provide the coverage to the Capitol building, like I said, all the other buildings, and would still meet within the definitions of the wireless code.
So your 6-month search found you only the one location.
Yes,
And you want to make that your permanent location.
yes, we do.
What's it going to look like permanent?
That will be fully stealthed and designed. It can be designed either as a tree or a structure. That part is going to be part of our submission later, that will comply with all of the stealthing requirements that Carson City has. And though I would add one other thing about cows, which isn't generally known, structurally the masts aren't able to hold anything of weight. That's why they're temporary. They're just meant to roll out, put up, like you mentioned, events, things like that. But sometimes we have these rare occasions where we have to cover while we're getting the new site approved and built. So those masts are not designed to hold stealth items like socks, which you will see on a faux tree or something of that nature. So that's where our problem comes in trying to stealth them.
But you could paint it.
I don't think we can, but I can always ask.
And then I have another question for you too, is that you said the other ones you couldn't use because
antennas?
of the residential, but there's residential adjacent to this site.
If I may, Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
So what our code says is that communication facilities need to be 4 times the height of the proposed cellular tower away from residential zones. So as the staff report outlines, the closest residential zone is about 400 feet away, so they far exceed the requirement for the setback from a residential zone. What we have to the southwest of this particular site is a general commercial zoned property with a residential use.
That has been there for like 50, 60, 70 years.
That may be, but it's a commercial zone.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that was there before I was born.
Yeah, I mean, just given that it's on a main arterial, William Street, I don't know that it would ever be residentially zoned. I think it'll always be commercial zoned of some sort, so. But that's the distinction, is the code distinctly identifies residential zoning, not the use.
As opposed to the use, even though the use has historically been.
Whether it's historic or not, it doesn't consider use, it considers zoning.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Witowski is here to discuss, we submitted the EME report that Heather mentioned. There is no concerns whatsoever for those commercially used apartments or commercially zoned apartments. And he can speak to that further if you have questions regarding that aspect.
The footprint's
I believe
36
you.
by 36.
What was that?
The footprint's 36 by 36.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's just co-located with Walton's.
I'm sorry, say it.
The funeral home.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to hurt the mausoleum at all.
Okay. All righty. Any further questions?
I have one more comment.
Okay.
Excuse me. I understand that this is temporary, but I'm also old enough to know that sometimes temporary becomes permanent. And I would like to do everything we can to make it uncomfortable for you to move faster. And if that involves changing the removal from the site to 1 year and saying you have to come back in a year and tell us where you are and when you're going to finish before we renew it again, that's fine. I just don't like temporary things. I know you all probably don't either, but I want you to be able to motivate your people up your chain of command to say, we got to get this done. And so one of the things that I would like for us to consider as a commission is recommend approval, item number 5, that the cash shall be removed from the site within 1 year of this approval. And if it's not, then I'm up for a 1-year extension, but I want you all to come back and talk to us about it. Because if there's not any progress, wasting another year is not going to help any of us. So, and that's, of course, that's my position, not everybody else's, but.
Yeah. I would like, Dina Manis is also running our permanent site, and she has information regarding where we are in that process.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that we are currently working on drawings and getting together our documents for that. However, to address your concern for the length of time, the FCC has limitations on temporary sites, and the maximum time frame is 2 years. So by law, we cannot be there any longer than that. They will not allow us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think what I'd like to do is go for public comment, please. you can't ask a question. You can make your public comment and say your concern, and then we can go ahead and they can address it. Thank you.
We need to sign. Because we're the applicant. Okay, okay. Okay.
Thank you for your patience. I am tired, and I'm sure you are. The deal for me is the consideration for the environmental studies that they're talking about are not going to be put forward in this situation. They're just going to plop it there for 2 years, no environmental studies. And my understandings of the height for the Lone Mountain was considered at almost 90-some feet. They don't measure it from the location it's on, but from the foundation of the ground around it and the area under it. So that is counting as a tower in itself and as a hill. And the next thing is the electromagnetic fields, that they don't want you to be near schools, they don't want you to be near set businesses that already were there at G3, or I'm sorry, now it's higher, it's G5 or such. And that means that they're going to need towers more and more all over the place. And so I was prepared to suggest to you all that we need to look for ground to put these towers and buy it or get it somehow and have those areas already delegated as sites that can be site to site, because with G5, you have to have more towers closer. And so if we started to plan ahead, like where we plan about our marijuana locations, we don't want them near schools, we don't want them near certain facilities, and think about that in advance, I think we'd be better off. Where they're putting it now, we're looking at people that are having apartments, and there are areas where people stay all day and work. They're going to be exposed to that electromagnetic field, and the reason they make towers high is not just for the line of sight, but it's for the safety aspect of it. When they get a person up in those towers, my understanding is they can only be up there 20 minutes if it's on. And then when it's off, of course, they don't want to have their power down or their customers interrupted. They want to get it done as quickly as possible. This is not a benign thing. It's something that it's light, it's easy to have it up there. The tower doesn't have to be as sturdy as a lot of things, but we do have winds here. So mobile or otherwise, it's doing the same danger, it's causing the same issues as a set tower, but it's not necessarily sturdy. And it's, to me, I think to consider a place by its zoning instead of who's inhabiting it is really bad, whether it's the environmental critters or one of us. So I think this is not something I want in my neighborhood, period, but I do want the services, so we got to figure it out. And in this case, they're not prepared. You don't even have a code. How much study have you done into it to find out its safety and its variability? You've already said don't have it in your schools. You're going to put it next to an apartment that's been there. And so put it on, get some state people to sell you some land or donate it.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Well, I'm just saying they're buying it up all over the place. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Tom Grundy, citizen of Carson City. I think for, granted, this is a temporary site, but I think for the permanent site, the Lone Mountain site should be considered. The antenna height is 60 feet higher than the top of these antennas. And it's my understanding that antenna height is what matters, not height off the ground. And when I looked at this application, I wondered why they didn't consider that site. It's closer to one existing site, the airport site, and a little farther from another. So I think that site should be considered.
Okay. Any further public comment? Seeing none, applicant come back to the table. And they did raise a good site, because I know that I sat on another thing where we actually approved the Lone Mountain site. And that was back with open space. Actually did that because it is on city land. And and the view corridor and the height, the antenna is higher. Why? Question is why was not that considered as a co-location site?
Because we already have an existing site out in the north side.
This is
It's
not-
referred to as, I believe, Fandango. That's our site name, but you may not know it. But we already have a site to the north. So when you have two sites, and David can speak to this more eloquently than I can, they have to be able to talk to each other and allow a little bit of overlap. But if they do this, then there's interference and it won't provide the signal that we need, and it'll reduce the coverage and capacity that we're targeting for the center of downtown.
Thank you. I'm David Witkowski. That's correct. Cellular sites share frequencies, and so when you put sites too close to each other, they provide redundancy but no value. Think about it if you were lighting your walkway or your driveway. You space the lights out because you want to have continuous coverage. If you put all your lights at one end of the driveway, it wouldn't do any good. And so in this case, it would also interfere. Those two sites would interfere with each other. So they have to be spaced out to avoid that interference, to provide that continuous coverage that the network needs. If this site is taken offline, then people will not be able to make calls. They will not be able to send texts, get data, given the population tends to rely heavily on their phones. You will have a significant gap in coverage that will exist until the permanent site is put in place. And that would include the area where we are right now.
I have another question for you too, because I know that there's already existing towers on it. Why didn't you consider the Bank of America building?
That would be a question for you.
I can answer that. We did speak with them, and there's no more space on the roof. They have two carriers that are existing, and they didn't have enough power that would allow us to power the facility there. And I did send in email correspondence to the planning department that we were denied.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Okay, and was there any other questions that came up with public comment?
So I know Denny had mentioned something about an environmental study not being conducted with this application, and it would be with the permanent. That's something that's not required by the city. That's something that they go through that's a little bit different than what I think folks are referring to as an environmental study that we commonly hear about. But that's not something that's required by the city for any telecommunications facility.
Okay.
And then, sorry, one more thing. The applicant had asked for clarification to condition number 9. So in terms of the screening fence and the equipment, it wouldn't just be the screening fence that needs to have that the non-glossy earth-toned neutral color. It would also need to be anything visible above that fence. So typically we see the tower and the antenna colored in that same tone.
Sure. And Commissioner DeChristopher?
Yeah, thank you for addressing the business rationale for not choosing Lone Mountain, for choosing the plaza area over it. I'm curious, since we have an expert in the house, I'm far from it. I know the other concerns, of course, of Carsonites is the potential health hazards.
Sure.
Can you address that in relationship to the differences between the Lone Mountain and the plaza as you ultimately, do you see that there is any difference in that citizens should have a concern over any health risks? Is it any higher or lower between Lone Mountain and Plaza? Because I know that is a concern.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to address that. So the Federal Communications and the U.S. government sets the guidelines for exposure to electromagnetic energy in the wireless bands. When we think of electromagnetic energy, from a physicist standpoint, there's no difference between radio and light, infrared, Any energy is electromagnetic energy. And RF is no different in terms of health versus, say, like light or infrared. We're constantly bathed in electromagnetic energy at all times in our daily life. It's just, for some reason, the public has a concern about cell sites, but they don't worry about, say, sitting close to a heat lamp at a restaurant, which is emitting an extremely large amount of electromagnetic energy in the infrared band. The FCC has set those limits 50% or, 98%, 50 times below the level at which an effect can be measured on the human body. So there's a 50x safety margin under which the medical science can measure that level. This ultimately derives from a couple of sources. One is the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements, the NCRP. The other is from the IEEE, from the International Commission on Electromagnetic Safety, which produces the TC95 standard. I serve on the TC95. So we actually produce the standard, the IEEE standard, that ultimately is adopted by the FCC. So I have some pretty intimate knowledge in how all of this is created, what the process is for reviewing medical science. And we're constantly updating that. We're constantly reviewing. Once the moment we produce the standard, we go into another review cycle to produce the next version of the standard. And the most recent version of the standard was produced in 2019. So I would summarize by saying I have no concerns over health regarding this site versus, say, Lone Mountain or anything else.
So in that respect, they're equivalent.
Well, I mean,
because you're meeting a standard.
So think about electromagnetic energy in this way. If you're, and I'm going to use the infrared lamp because that's something we're all somewhat familiar with. If you go to a restaurant, you're sitting outside on a cold night, the closer you sit to that the infrared lamp, the warmer you are. You sit close to a fire, the closer you get to the fire, the warmer you are. It's because you're absorbing more infrared electromagnetic energy from the fire, from the heat lamp. The farther away from that you move, the less warm you feel because you're not absorbing as much energy. The energy from my cellular site decreases exponentially as you move away from it. So within this particular site, the safety zone is actually about 50 feet in front of the antenna at a height of 61 feet. So you would have to be levitating in midair and approach the antenna in order to actually feel an effect that would be above the limit. On the ground, the levels are much below what you would experience. And if you put it on Lone Mountain versus somewhere else, you're still going to have that ring around it, but it's going to be about 50 feet wide and at a height of about 60 feet. Everything outside of that is safe. And that's within that safety margin. So you're not only safe, but you have that 50x safety margin on top of that, if that helps.
It does help.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
welcome.
let me add in from a legal perspective as well. You mentioned several times that the FCC sets the standards.
That's correct.
Just to more specifically answer Denny's comments, the FCC regulates that aspect of health and the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's not something that localities and this body can look into, require, do studies of, or something like that. That would be...
that is, and that's...
Denny, you'd have to go to the FCC.
Yeah, and that's correct. Thank you for pointing that out. The site complies with the FCC guidelines, and as set forth by the federal government, and the analysis methods that were used are derived from a variety of sources, including the group that I'm a part of. This site is safe and has no issues.
And thank you. I know you gave us more of a longhand, but I appreciated it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Don't jump your pogo stick up 60 feet.
That's right. Yes. Well, I'm not worried about it because very few people levitate in the air at 61 feet. So I'm not,
We have super women on this.
Well, maybe that's maybe that might be a problem.
Okay.
Just don't go near.
Okay, any further questions? I think one thing though too is I'd like to go ahead and run it past the commissioners because you've asked that item 9 where you don't paint the cow. Okay. Our standards say that it has to be, correct?
I would need a moment to take a look, but that's a standard condition. So like I said, the trailer itself is screened behind a neutrally colored, fence.
Most people aren't going to see that. They're gonna
That's
see the
correct.
tower.
It's the tower and the antenna that are typically the items that are painted in addition to the fence.
Real quickly, can you define what the color currently is of the cow? Just for the record.
Yes, I have a picture of it, in fact, in front of me. It is, the top, the masts are gray, neutral gray, non-glossy, non-reflective. And they will be raised up to the height designated. The ground equipment is also the same color, the neutral gray with non-reflective surfaces.
Madam Chair, what
Yes.
the code says is that ground and roof mounted facilities shall be painted non-glossy color that blends in with the surrounding natural and built environment. So maybe the answer for number 9 is to say, keep it that it has to be painted unless the director finds it's in compliance with the development standards. So if the gray already works, she doesn't have to paint it again.
Well, look at me, I didn't do this. Well, it's kind of a neutral airplane gray right now. Question is whether or not we want it to be a neutral brown instead of a neutral gray. And I
Blue,
don't-
because it's up in the sky.
It's up in the sky, I don't think it makes much difference. I just don't want to be there very long.
And that is not our plan.
I want to help motivate you,
Yeah.
that's all.
Understood.
Okay.
I was just going to say, if we could go with neutral, because I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the least of the concerns about a tower. And maybe it's because I spent a great deal of time in the Midwest, but this is what every system looks like for emergencies, right? Your tornadoes, and it's always a neutral metal color. So knowing it's temporary, I personally would be fine with just indicating a neutral color and just hope it indicated if that's what the metal is, the material now, so be it.
Yeah, I think based on tonight's discussion, the condition does identify that neutral component, and we do have the ability to take a look at that
Yeah.
specific color when we look at the building permit.
I just think the surrounding slats need to also be the same. Whatever the color is, it needs to, we
We can
don't want a white slat or
We
something.
can have the fencing match the color of the
Yeah.
cow. And the mast, so that all,
But item 9 says that the color of the proposed fencing slats would also need to be reviewed by staff, so I don't see us getting in the middle of color wheels.
Okay, Commissioner Lloyd?
As long as we're not changing any of the conditions, I'm going to suggest a motion. I move to approve the special use permit, case number LU 2024-0242, based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No,
We have one opposed, and Chuck, on what conditions?
the time frame.
The time frame?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you did, didn't? Oh, they were both muted? Okay. Commissioner Brooks, was that an aye or an A?
That's an aye.
Okay. Commissioner Cron, aye or nay?
That's a nay.
Is that a no?
He's muted.
No, he didn't answer.
I can't hear you, Vern.
We may not have it.
Now let's try this again. I'm sorry. No, that was a yes. I am in support of that motion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Borders was the nay vote?
I was a no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Staff reports.
Okay, in terms of your, well, obviously, there's a special meeting, we'll talk about it in a minute, but for your August 8th regular meeting, I'm, I'm sorry, for your September meeting, the items aren't due until August 8th, so I don't know what will be on the agenda yet. In terms of the master plan, we do have our meeting coming up. You should have at your desk late material. It says staff reports, non-action items. Do you have this at your seat?
I don't remember.
Okay, so this is a calendar the chair asked for. So on August 8th, Adams Hub, this will be during the day at 2 o'clock. You'll have your workshop with the consultant, and the consultant will be physically at the meeting, facilitating that meeting with you. You'll then leave that meeting at 4:30 to be here at 5 o'clock for regular business. And again, because the due date's not till August 8th, I don't know what's on the agenda. On August 29th, which is the next day, the consultant will be holding some stakeholder meetings. And then at 5 p.m. that evening, they'll have a community meeting. So you can certainly attend the community meeting if you'd like. On September 3rd is your special meeting on Title 18 and Title 18 Appendix. September 5th, there's a virtual meeting on the master plan, which is a community meeting that you're welcome to attend. It's not a planning commission meeting. And then on September 25th is your regular meeting. In October, November, and December, there will be workshops with the with the consultant on the master plan, but we have not specifically identified those dates yet. Also on the master plan, we had a couple listening tours. Commissioner Cron, do you want to talk about the listening tour at the ice cream store?
Yeah, we had a small, but we had a small turnout, but they were very engaged once we got going. I was very pleased to be a part of that, along with Hope and some of the staff that came along. We had a good interaction, but the focus basically ended up being on affordable housing. Virtually every one of the people that attended saw affordable housing as a huge need to be addressed during this master plan process. And they gave some real interesting stories about how having housing that just sucks so much out of their incomes and some of the people they have to deal with was really kind of heart-wrenching. So it's definitely a need in the community, and I know the commission is sensitive to that. But it was a good interaction, and I appreciated Hope's connections into the Hispanic community to allow that to happen.
We also had 2 meetings with 2 different apartment complexes. We went to Carson Hills to meet with the residents there because I wanted the renter perspective, and Marlette Apartments as well. Again, turnout was low, but I have to laugh because one of the things in both cases they brought up, and Ellen, I'm going to look at you because one of the things they brought up is things are closing too early and they want things to stay open. And you know why? The very first listening session Ellen and I went to, it ended and Ellen and I walked to the parking lot together and she said, I didn't know there was such a demand for nightlife. And yes, there is a demand for nightlife. So that was interesting, but they enjoy the downtown, and there's a lot of positives. There's concern about the homelessness, and it was interesting to me. Also, it was very small groups at both apartment complexes, but the input was very similar to what we've been hearing at all the other listening sessions. So that was interesting. So we have no other listening sessions scheduled at this point. I think at this point, it's time for you to look at the document. Tomorrow, I'll be reading a draft of the document. You don't have it yet. And I'll provide comments or thoughts to the consultant. She'll finalize that draft and we'll get it to you for the August 28th meeting. In terms of Title 18 and the timing on that, I don't have it. I don't know how quickly I can get it to you, but as soon as I can, obviously I will. And that's my report.
Okay. And I have a request. Is you have us at the Planning Commission meeting here in the boardroom on the 23rd. This is not with the Board of Supervisors, right?
No, it's not a joint meeting. I did not think it was necessary to have a joint meeting. And also at your meeting on September 3rd, you actually, per the code, are required to conduct a public hearing. And so that will be you conducting the public hearing and then making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. I think that's jumping the gun, basically what we've been hearing here from the different commissioners on how we feel about this. So my suggestion is, and I'm going to request, that you set up a workshop as soon as we can get that Title 18. I mean, we need to have it and need to have it in a decent amount of time for us to look at because it is such a huge document. In addition to that, I would like to have a workshop, as we've been doing at the Hub. I'd like to invite the former commissioners, Paul Eswine, Jay Wiggins, and Rick Perry. And I'd like to have them have copies of those documents too. So that way, those are the people that actually died on the Hill and fight on a lot of different things. And I'd like to have their perspective if they would volunteer to do so. But I think that needs to happen before we ever have a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors. I think we need to familiarize ourselves with it again, look at it, not be in a situation where it's right down our throat. And this thing has been going on for a long time because we didn't have a consultant. We didn't have a contract that said you will have it completed. And I know that you've caught a bunch of hell for it, but really this originally started back with Lee Plimo. We had these things going on. And honestly, when we sit in a meeting like this, we're not able to even discuss things. We're not able to debate on them. And the Board of Supervisors, I realize, have the final say. However, we're not talking to them either. And we're not able to go ahead and discuss why something was important or why it wasn't important. And I think the other thing is, though, too, is that we have had the experience of the working on the master plan. And so I know that there's certain things in Title 18 that I have a different perspective of, as they may too. So can I make that request, and can we kick this September 3rd thing down to not be a public hearing, because we won't have anything to discuss if we don't have it now? I think we need at least, what, do you think 2 weeks to look at this? At least 2 weeks, that we need to actually be able to read it ourselves so we can discuss it at a workshop. This is a huge document. And like I said, I don't understand why we're pushing, because the last time truly it looked like it was revisited was in the 30s. So anyway, that's
I hear you. One thing you said that I just need to clarify. Right now, there is no plan for a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Are you saying you like one? Okay, just to confirm. Okay.
No.
But you'd like a workshop prior to holding the public hearing?
Absolutely.
Understood. And I will look at the calendar. We have a little bit of time, and if I can pull that together, I will, and I'll just stay in communication with you on that.
Please, thank you.
And I have a question. Oh,
Yeah,
go
Vern.
ahead, Vern.
Yeah, Vern.
Yeah, Madam Chair, one of the things, and I think you've articulated how I feel as well, but one of the other things, I think we need to let the public have a time to read this document. You
Yes.
know, it's kind of like, we kind of sort of live and breathe this stuff, kind of, a little more than the general public does. We take a document that is as thick as it is and give the public only a week or a few days to look at it, it's going to feel like, we have to pass it before we know what's in it. And I don't think the community is serviced by, and the public is given that opportunity, because there are, as you know, there are a number of people who really are engaged in this process. And if they get a big document like that dumped on them and only have 3 or 4 days to look at it, I don't think it's going to go down well. And I don't think it's fair to the community who we have spent so much time going out and talking to about the master plan, and we give them virtually no time to comment or interact with us or provide us good ideas related to Title 18. I think it's a disservice to the community, let alone frustrating experience for us.
Great. Commissioner Lloyd?
A great place to have a copy of that would be at the library. Just saying. This is a not on the topic of Title 18 question, but when there are 5 Wednesdays in a month, do we meet on the 4th Wednesday or the 5th Wednesday?
You meet on the last Wednesday of the
Okay,
month.
perfect. Thank you. I was just clarifying because that is coming up.
Terry, just one question. One thing I wanted to bring up is I know we've been focused on 18 for all the right reasons and couldn't agree more with Vern on the optics, not just the optics. We do get really good feedback from the public. So I think we'd get a lot out of that, having it available, but I want to extend that to 17. Back in March of 2023, we had conversation, putting moratorium on 1710. What are we going to do with 1709? We committed to looking at that. We committed to talking about hillside development. I look at those things as being key, given we're talking about updating the master plan. How do we still feel about those? Do those still work for us? So totally agree with Title 18. I just don't want Title 17 to get lost in the process.
Yes, here. Commissioner Commissioner Brooks? Do you have any input on this?
I'm not sure he's on.
Okay.
No, he's on. He has an AV issue for a moment. Sorry. No, my main concern was addressed by your request for additional time in a workshop, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Do we have any other? Are you sure? Okay, great. So then I have public comment. I didn't forget you, Denny.
Just we few.
Thank you, Chair. Denny French for the record. I see that we are hard at this and that regardless of our positions, I can't see anyone here or think anyone's here that doesn't care. I am very frustrated that we do not have codes about things like towers. We don't even have any regulations, and we're following a gentleman from a company that has millions of dollars and they didn't think ahead to buy some land in strategic locations. I knew this was coming as soon as they changed the direction because towers had to be closer. They can either cooperate and share towers, which was talked about on an NPR program, or they can squabble and try to build them everywhere and have that overlapping consideration. Well, just recently, we've had one of the biggest mess ups by a company that was just going to give us an update on something and it closed down operations all over the country, globally. And that just happened. So we've got to think ahead as where we want these things. I'm thinking ahead of where I'd like to keep nature where it is so that we have food supplies for our butterflies and our bees, but communication is how we get along. And if we don't figure it out, we're going to have a hell of a hard time. So I'd like to see us a little bit more strategic about our thinking ahead. This shouldn't happen. That temporary where they're putting it, they are not doing environmental studies because you don't make them. You don't even suggest it. They suggested it to themselves because that's part of what they hit with other places that are more into their environment than we are, apparently. They've already been asked to do it before. We're just not requiring it. And that's a shame. They could find out, hey, I could stand next to that thing for 10 years and not have a problem. Or like my study suggests, it's not so. And the more that we are filling our space with these energy fields, the less insects can get around because their directional equipment gets messed up. So I'm thinking outside the box, and it's sort of a shame that we don't understand the situation at Lone Mountain better. Because Lone Mountain in itself is a tall tower. And it was emitting enough energy to get to where it needed to go at a G3. We upped the ante on it, and we limited our ability to utilize those towers. And we have to put more towers up instead of less. So some things get us forward as how it sounds, and it's wonderful, and it will provide us, makes us more vulnerable. And I think until we really give that a good look at, I think we've got a problem. And it frustrated me today. And thank you so much, Commissioner Christensen, for asking the health issue matter. And I wasn't real comfortable with his answer. It's not what I found. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything?
Before you bang on that,
Yes.
how come my water's so turbid? Yeah, my house water is turbid. You know what turbid is? That means when you fill up the glass, it looks like it's cloudy and it settles. Are we doing something to the water system?
I can only give you my best guess, Stephen.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
So the city does do regular maintenance, including flushing.
Yeah.
And that does stir up sediment, so I'm guessing that's what it was.
Well, it's been 2 months.
I think it's all those people on that trail
Consistently.
above your house.
Yeah, that's probably it.
I don't know.
Okay. I move we adjourn.
Yeah, have a second, please.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries.
Aye.